allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comment. Is there any public comment?
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm here to set the record straight. I may not change your opinion, but that is okay, because I know what kind of person my husband really is. Mrs. Obert, a couple of weeks ago, you regurgitated old news regarding Tim. That's a good description, because people keep throwing up old news, which is all they have. You brought up the Matthew Shepard story. It is a horrifying story, but here's the rest of the story. The Facebook exchange you brought up was over 10 years after Matthew was killed. Tim does not live in the past, so he had no idea or recollection that is what Dennis Scranton was referring to. You failed to mention that he apologized for that debacle numerous times. You also failed to mention the rest of the story. Investigative journalist Stephen Jimenez spent 13 years interviewing more than 100 people with a connection to the case. To sum it up, Matthew was also into drugs and knew the two young men who murdered him. Stephen reported Matthew was addicted to and dealing crystal meth and had dabbled in heroin. He also took significant sexual risks and was being pimped alongside Aaron McKinney, one of his killers, whom he had occasional sexual encounters with. In regard to the rape and violence allegation from the article you used as evidence, that is Martin Kidston's words. Tim's Facebook page reads, and I quote, "Here is the lead tyrant in Missoula that wants your guns and wishes to throw unknown refugees onto the streets of Montana. She accuses those that seek transparency and accountability of hate and fearmongers. She needs your help, God." So you condemned Tim for the derogatory comments by others made regarding the city council member. I also know that you are the type that needs to be in control. That has been apparent for the last 6 years you have been commissioner. You fought with Commissioner Slifka constantly and degraded him whenever he questioned your actions or did not go along with you. You sat in your seat and showed contempt for him. In my opinion, not very professional. You were sued by Commissioner Slifka for breaking open meeting laws, and yet you still sit here continuing to do the same thing. I guess that's because no one else questions you? Why not? There were two long-standing employees who were in their jobs long before you were ever elected, and they have been fired since you came on board. I know they were not incompetent, but you found reasons to dismiss them and got at least one other commissioner to go along with you. Why? I wish I knew. From 2015 to 2018, a new tax showed up on my bill, economic development. It has been as low as 0.06 mils and as high as 0.33. I'm not sure what all that entails, but I'm willing to bet that some of that money, if not all, went to MBAC. And then you have the gall to say, because you make a disclosure, you don't have conflict of interest? I disagree. When you make motions and vote on issues that involve the entity your husband works for, that is a conflict of interest. On that note, when you were questioned about that during one of the candidate forums, you stated you would recuse yourself from voting, yet you are on record as making motions to give thousands of dollars to MBAC. You argue with the county attorney and tell him he is wrong when he tries to give you sound advice. I gather you went to law school as well. You are a typical politician. You tell people what you think they want to hear and what you think they need to hear. You are not upfront and honest. Tim is that. Whether you like it or not, he will tell it how it is. He doesn't try to paint the rosy picture or the feel-good story. For that, he is condemned. And I'm not very impressed with the other two that sit there next to you because they seem to go along to get along. Why is that? And I'll give you a few minutes to contemplate, and then when I leave, you can do your rebuttal. Thank you.
Actually, if you want to stay, Chris, I did cite credible articles. I'm not going to rehash any of that. It was a rebuttal to a question from Tim to be placed on the county board. And to everything you said, you are absolutely entitled to your own opinion, but I think it's horrific to muddy the name of a murder victim who's not here to defend himself. That is
It is, and it's horrific to make him a victim when he
That's all I have to
wasn't,
say.
when he wasn't all that innocent.
Any other public comment? Okay, let's see, we'll move on to the silo season plan, CDBG letter. We need to approve this plan, is that?
That was brought up by BOR at the meeting we had at the silos. We do it every year, and it's just an update. The CDBG letter, that we don't have anything there. I misread an email, and so I just emailed everything he was asking for.
So what involvement does our conservation district have out there?
I don't think any.
Nothing? Okay.
I've never seen anything in the minutes or agenda regarding the silos, and
Okay.
never been contacted.
Okay,
But something could come up, I just don't know.
all right. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Al a question if I could, please. Certainly. Al, so you're here. I guess I'm looking that you guys are you guys working on like fundraising to match a donation by BOR, is that?
Yes, sir. We now have our fundraising letter written, and everybody in the group has reviewed it. They have it in their hands, and we're starting to get out to use it. So we'll be making appointments with community groups and all that kind of stuff, outreaching. The grant world is pretty tight on planning grants, but yes, we are beginning to launch that. As you well know, we have to have that in hand by the 1st of October, so they'll transfer that funds to you.
Gotcha. All right. Okay. Thanks.
Could the citizens group get a copy of that letter when you sign it? Thank you.
Is BOR's donation of $445,000, is that, do you have to match the entire amount, or?
The initial discussion we have had is that, yes, if we do not match the full 45, they can match whatever we have. But yeah, that's been the discussion so far is 50% match.
Saddles Recreation Area.
I'd be happy to make that motion if you guys don't have any questions.
Yeah, no,
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
The vote? Yes, sir, Tim?
just real quick, sir. The CBDG grant, I guess I may have missed what you're speaking of there. How much is this grant? And is it already applied, or is it, just trying to get a handle on where this is at. I understand it's a BOR program for planning. I guess if you wouldn't mind, maybe give a quick summary of what we're talking about here, because the agenda really doesn't give much of a clue.
So the CDBG grant is not part of this?
No, the CDBG grant has been on the agenda a dozen times, give or take. And that is for an update to the county growth policy, which,
Okay, so it's the same
and the
one.
CIP,
Okay,
which is the capital improvement plan, and the floodplain. This 45,000 that we're talking about with Al is money that BOR put up with a one-to-one agreement with the Citizens Advisory Group in order to implement the master plan and put it together into an engineered plan with phases.
thank you for the explanation or clarification.
We'll take a vote, all in favor of approving the work plan for 2019?
I,
Opposed, same. Motion carried.
if we could sign two, we could give Al one right now
Okay.
for his group. Thank you. Thanks, Al.
Okay, we'll move on to the 10.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, one more follow-up question if I could. Al, maybe, don't want to be out of order here. If you're going to be coming up with the match for the 45,000 grant, is that coming out of the Canyon Prairie Trust, or is that coming from some other source?
Well, we're gonna be looking at whatever sources we can work with.
Nothing in progress at this point?
No.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Move on to our 10-15 Trust Board fiscal year 2020 budget submission, bylaws update, adopt grant and project standards.
We are ready, sir. We put the budget, which you have in the packet. It's on the first page, and what we did is we hit the budget items, and the one that's might catch your eye, and we did this intentionally so that the whole of the trust is available, because we had some problems in the past where we tried to budget, and we got to a point where we couldn't pay on some of the grants until we went through a budget adjusting process. So that's the reason we presented it in this form. Okay? Doesn't mean we have to spend it, it's just it's available. Okay?
Are you Your professional services and your contract services, do you have major projects coming up that you're budgeting that for, or you're just giving yourself some leeway there?
We gave us some space.
Okay,
Doesn't mean we're gonna spend it, but in the event we have a situation come up, we have enough space to take care of it without adjusting the budget.
okay.
We do have the ongoing Bureau Rec requirement on the leases with the golf course and rod and gun. And we hired an attorney and we haven't gotten the bills. I think we've gotten one bill on that, but we
Okay.
anticipate some coming in.
Mr. Chair, if I may, can we get an update on that process? I understand he was hired to redo the concessionaire contracts with the different groups. How's that coming? Is it close to
Oh,
done?
by leaps and bounds. I'm not sure, Virgil gave us a pretty good update on rod and gun, and maybe you can elaborate on that. Golf course, I think we're pretty close with them. Virgil, you want to mention rod and gun?
Yeah, we've had two meetings with the attorney here. And the first was just to get a draft started. And then we presented, and there was some adjustments to that one. And then he come to the gun club our last meeting and presented the draft he had at the point. And we're prepared to adjust a little bit on that one and go ahead, and then he found some more information somewhere, so he's back to redrafting, and we should have a document in July that meets the needs of the Park Service, we have to deal with them in this concessionaires agreement, plus some of the others. For your information, the issue that has surfaced that will be the biggest for the gun club is we have two entities now. We have the lease at Indian Creek, which is a standard real estate lease, and this one coming up is a little bit different. And at the moment, we're not sure how the insurance is going to work. We may have to have two policies instead of one. And once we get the final document we sign, then we'll approach the insurance companies to see how they want to handle it, whether it's in two policies or whether they can write it so one will do the job for both. So that's where that stands at the moment.
Thank you.
And the golf course had their board meeting, I believe, last week, so I should hear, I think they communicated directly with Peter Simon. So I should hear back from them this week about any changes.
All right, thank you. And the softball club, are you guys?
Doesn't exist.
All right. Thank you.
So Virgil, is this $876,000, is this what's available?
That would be available, yes, sir.
Okay,
So if you had a project that covered the whole thing, the funds would be available to start the project when it happened. So to go back, as far as developing budgets, we did this in the past and we didn't leave enough available cash. And one of the projects grew a little bit and we couldn't pay on it until we went back to the commission for a budget adjustment. So that's the reason we do it this way.
the thought behind the $3,000 for publicity the same? You just wanted to have a chunk of money in there just in case?
We do our monthly advertising for our meeting, and we pay a fee for that. What we have in mind there, and with that larger amount, is if we need to hold hearings for a project. If, let's say, the new plan, the survey that came out, they're talking about a building and improvements at the fairgrounds. So as that study goes on, we say, okay, we could cover those two items by a nice building at the fairgrounds. That's going to require a public hearing because it's going to be a massive thing. So we thought we'd put some money in for a facilitator for that meeting. So, and lots of advertising for that. So that's kind of what we had in mind. So it's a bit of overkill, but we didn't want to come in for a budget amendment for it. So.
And the professional services at $15,000, what's the thought there?
Oh, gosh, we've got two there. We've got professional services and contracted services. Professional services, I think, is attorney.
And tax preparation,
Yeah.
which is minor, but that we always pay, I think it's, I don't know, 700 or something.
And then $25,000 for contracted services, also attorney?
Depends on the situation. That one, I don't think we considered that attorney. I think that's if we needed to hire surveyors or, I guess research, not necessarily attorney. One nice thing with the way we're set up, as major things come in, we bring it to the commission regardless. I mean, we pay our monthly bills without bringing those in, and our minor stuff, but we get anything big, we're gonna bring it in for approval. So you guys get a double hit at it, so.
And the machinery and equipment for $1,000.
Years ago, we bought Debbie a computer, and of course it's outdated and died and went away. And so we went to her and said, what do you want to do? And she has her own now and does not charge us for that. But she's got a printer that's on the blink. So we've been postponed a number of times because, she's got 2 junk printers and some of my old office printers, and you might need to update her printer.
Excuse me.
So that's what we have in mind there.
And the contract, I would add, contract services would also include anything in the future for 2020, for Mia Whitfield, for grant writing.
Yeah, good point. And Mia, she works relatively inexpensively. Matter of fact, for her services, quite inexpensively. But when she, at the summation of a contract like the Bureau Rec, she's got a bonus written into her contract. So when she completes one and scores, and we get some free land, we give her a bonus. So it's still a stipend. It's not.
And it's set. It's a set amount.
It's a set amount. Yep.
It's not at our discretion, or your discretion.
Thank you.
I had a question for you. As far as the revenue side for the trust board, this is all expenditures, obviously. Right now, we're not expecting to take anything out of First Premier, but depending on the market and the grants. So do we need to submit anything? That would totally be a shot in the dark.
No.
Okay.
Your revenues are kind of set by, well, are certainly set by the corpus.
Right.
What's on
Right.
top of the corpus, so, no.
Okay, That's what I thought, I just wanna make sure.
Is this 876 that you've got here, that's not affected by the market anymore, that's already pulled out?
That's on our cash account here.
Okay.
We'll need to work with our finance officer on this, but she may not, and the auditor may have some opinions about putting that full amount in here. But to Virgil's comments, as long as you have more than zero in a particular line item, you actually can spend. If we give you our blessing on a grant, for example, and you don't have quite enough money in there, we can still award that. You can still pay the check to whoever that entity is, and then the amendment process is done after. So it shouldn't preclude anybody from getting their project funded if you do put, again, the $100,000 in there. It would, I'm guessing the auditor's gonna say something about checks and balance on that. But we'll check with Debbie and see what she says and what her opinion is on all that. And we've checked with her on all the budgets, it's not just yours.
Any further questions on the budget then?
Not for me.
If not, we'll move on to the bylaws update.
I emailed you the bylaws, so this is the whole with the attachments.
Fantastic, thank you. Just a quick question before we start. Did Tom Budowitz write these up years ago when this first started?
Yes,
I
years
believe
and
so.
years ago, and we've modified them pretty substantially. Nothing that would change the legal parameters of it, as to the wording will say in there, but you know, at the period of time when we wrote those up, our primary consideration was the lake. And that was that's what we used as a flogging tool in DC to get some funding. It's most of the lakes in Broadwater County, and yet we don't get any of the funding, so.
That was quite a coup.
Yeah,
It is good.
but Tom, yeah, we used him a lot that period of
I don't know why, but I could hear Tom's voice.
time. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. He flew to DC, as did Virgil, at just cost. No fees, no nothing, just a cost. So we flew he and his daughter back, so that was the only perk he received was hotel rooms and flights. Virgil too, so. I think Virgil went by himself though.
The only comfort part was it was first class out and back, and that really helped.
Don't get used to it.
So the rewrite of these used that original set of
Yes.
bylaws. It took the example that you had in the package when you had all the boards meet. We took that outline and meshed the two of them together. So there's a lot in the outline that's changed from a heading, wording standpoint, numbering, all that kind of stuff. The layout more matches the stuff that you had. But a lot of the wording is still that, but it's updated for, you know, what's gone on in the past almost 15 years since the original bylaws.
Thank you.
In that packet that I handed out, you will also see the grant application is in here, the revised grant application. These bylaws and the grant application, and anything in here that didn't come from you guys, the Broadwater County Trust Goals and Standards, I guess that's it, everything else is from you. The spending has been approved by the trust board.
Okay.
What we would like is to have you folks review the information that's in here, the bylaws, as well as the new grant application. And if there's some changes or additions you wish to include, send them back to us and we'll make the adjustments And hopefully by that time, we have a final draft which we all can sign and move forward.
If we could, following up on that, if we could get the grant application, if you review that ASAP and approve that one, that would allow us to hand that one out. It's a cleaner, more abbreviated, better copy for them, for the public.
Yeah, it's, we discovered we need to have a little better tracking process, and that's included in there.
We followed your lead on that. We didn't take this lightly. I bet we have 4 months in this, so.
Thank you.
And we have, I think, 4 working meetings to get it this far.
And a case of paper.
Copy paper.
The other thing you'll notice in there is on your signature page or the page after that, all the attachments. We felt that it was important that direction that you as commissioners give the boards, we wanted that attached to our bylaws, because as we make people aware of the bylaws, that information is attached, but it's not amended in, it's an attachment. So that if you change it, we just change it. We don't have to go back through and change the bylaws. But it has it all present so that anybody can pick that package up and go, okay, here's the bylaws and here's the commission's direction for the board as to how we do things. So that's why that's in there that way.
Well done. Debbie, the packet you just handed us, the bylaws are the same as the ones you emailed us, right? Okay.
Yes.
All right, I didn't have any questions on the bylaws. I do like that with the amendments, I think that's well done.
To approve these bylaws, or do we want to take some time to review?
Well, I guess I'd still like to have a little bit of time to approve.
Okay.
That's fine with me.
So we will take a look at these and get back with you on the grant proposal for sure. We'll try to get that taken care of before you get back to you with any changes we might have. When do you guys have another meeting?
July 8th or 9th? Don't have a calendar in front of me. Whatever that Tuesday is.
9th.
I do have some questions on the application though.
Okay.
Want me to jump in?
Yes.
Okay. So, on the application, what you guys included, in the single-page sheet, that actually answers a lot of my, questions on the application. Policy for grant application, I think that's excellent.
Which page are you on?
I'm on the single page that was in Debbie's packet, and it's got the, trust board goals and standards right here at the top. So as I understand it, this would be included for anybody who requests an application, they would be getting this. Okay, good. It clarifies a lot. So a couple of questions then that I had in the application. Some of these we don't even have to talk about because they're on this sheet, but I do think it would be less confusing for an applicant to have these general guidelines actually mirror your standards right here. That are, these are kind of the same, but they're a little bit more confusing than the single sheet. Does that make sense? I can give you an example if you want. You look
Okay.
confused, Steve. So,
Please.
the first paragraph under general grant guidelines says the very
You're at
last.
I'm sorry, Laura, you're at page 2 of the grant application itself.
Yes, yes. So it says the higher the match amount percentage, the more beneficial. An applicant applying for the grant doesn't know if a match is required. What does beneficial mean? Does it help them? Would 25% help them more than 10? What you have in the goals and standards is a little bit more clear. Recommendations from the county recreation board on the priority of the grant, a matching fund, number 3, from grant application is recommended. This matching can be in the order of donations of time, material, and use of construction equipment. A little bit more specificity might be good if that does weigh in the decision. If it doesn't weigh in the decision, then maybe a sentence that it doesn't weigh in the decision would help clarify that. So if that is something that you do consider, let the applicant know, would be my thought, in a way that's clear.
Does the sentence on the grant application above the one that you highlighted, while BCTV does not have a mandatory match requirement, like to see 30% match or more?
And what's not clear there is likes to see. So if it's 30% or more, do they get an extra couple of points? Do they get stronger consideration? If it's 25 instead of 30, what does that mean for the applicant? Some of those things.
We shied away from the
Yeah.
point system, and we discussed.
And that's fine, but it's not clear here, point system or not. What I'm getting at is the lack of clarity of, do they have to have a 30%? Can they have 25? That's what I'm getting at for the clarity questions, not really the points, but does it matter to the applicant if they're not at 30? If it does, how does it? Does that make sense?
It does, but we tried to leave ourselves some wiggle room on that. And we discussed that if it's a project that we thought had substantial public benefit and they could only come up with 10%, we thought if our board thought it merited approval, we would. That's why we left that very vague and floating. So if it's not a very good project and they come up with 30%, maybe it's not as good as one that comes up with 10. So we're trying to be vague there. We're trying not to paint ourselves into, oh, we came up with 30%, so we get 2 more pegs on the chart than somebody else. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to leave it to public, to our discretion, and we'll submit to your discretion.
And for the applicant, maybe if you put that sentence in there, you know, if, just
We can
exactly
try
what you
to word
said.
that.
Yeah,
That's-
I think that would be beneficial. Just thinking about, the person who's gonna put the time into applying needs to know, you know, who's eligible, what projects are eligible, what the scoring criteria is. Yeah, it's not a point system, but what you just said, include that sort of thing. That's my own thinking on that. It's very, very clear, again, in the goals and standards, where it says in the event the grant application requires construction of buildings and other construction, the proposed must be signed off by a licensed engineer or architect. It's, I would suggest just shifting that language. The language in the application itself states that every project needs to have a licensed engineer designed and approve site plans. So I would just take this is really clear, and just shift it over. Because I think that would, if it confused me, yeah, I think it would confuse an applicant. The next paragraph that starts, project grant proposal must be submitted to the secretary 2 weeks prior to the established meeting. I would suggest a date certain. It's simpler for applicants. By the 1st of the month, for example, by the 25th of the month, whatever day it is, so that they have a clear understanding, because not everybody knows when you guys meet. So I think it would just be more clear for the public, if that's doable.
I missed the first part of that.
Oh, I just
Yeah.
suggested that a date versus 2 weeks before when your meeting is. Not everybody knows when your meeting is. A person who's immersed in, whatever their passion is, and they're working, and they're raising a family, and they're volunteering for the community, isn't tracking when the trust board meets. So to say 2 weeks before is vague. I would suggest by the 1st of the month. That way, it's solid for everybody. They can grasp that. It's easy to understand, and they don't have to do any research to figure out when that next meeting is.
So what we were trying to do with that was, if, a couple things. One is, it doesn't work if somebody walks into the meeting and gives us an application. They're automatically deferred, at least for a decision, until the next meeting. But in between time, if somebody was to bring a proposal in, we felt we wanted enough lead time to be able to review that, do our due diligence on that before we got to the meeting. And we felt 2 weeks was adequate, but we realize it's so short that we try and make that work. If we go to the 1st of the month, just like in July, our meeting's the 9th, we got basically a week.
Like I
And-
said, pick the 25th. I just picked a number out of the air, but what I'm saying is, for the applicant, for the citizen, it's more clear for them to have a number than 2 weeks before your meeting. They don't know when your meeting is. Who do they call? Who's the chair of that board? I don't even know who the secretary is. Those are the questions that they have, because they are not immersed in what you guys are doing. They're immersed in their own lives. So if you said the 25th or the 15th, whatever date you guys want to choose, if you make it a number, it's easier on the public who's applying for the grant, is all I'm saying. It's just a suggestion. If you guys don't want to follow it, it's still my suggestion, but, I'm one of 3, so. So yeah, if you guys want to hash that around, but no, I just picked the first out of the year. You can pick any number.
What we're trying to do is to keep from adding a month sometimes on an application, because generally we get feelers or people ask for some information, and those are what serious, so we can try to get them lined up in the process so we don't add another month. And this was one of the conditions that we tried to figure. So if we go to the 1st of the month and say some group come in, say on the 13th or something after our meeting, then that's gonna sit there for 3 weeks until the next meeting. So the idea there was to try to shorten the period for the application people, so they would, if they got it in on time, you see, then we wouldn't have that delay in the process of examining the application. So that was one of the reasons we looked at.
Yeah, I think it's well reasoned. Yeah.
It also allows us time to get a feel for the public, what the public has in mind. And then when they come in and present the app, we can ask better questions.
Now, one of the problems that we've had over the years is timing on the grants so that it fits into a construction, so they can get the funds to do whatever is during the construction season, which, sometimes, particularly stuff on the outside, we have about 6 or 7 months that it's comfortable enough to get things done. After that, it starts to drag depending on the weather. So we try to get the outside constructions, if the grant application group wants that, then we try to get them started early enough, either in the fall or in the spring, so they go through, that they can work in the outdoor construction period, down to the weather and so on. So we've, over the years, tried to figure out schemes to keep the process moving forward, so they don't lose a lot of time during, miss a season of construction.
Makes good sense, I think we're on the same page.
I think you guys are
With the
talking about
intent.
the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, really are,
Yeah.
just a little different
Yeah.
language. And Debbie, my question is most likely people are gonna come pick up this application from you.
Yeah, I get the phone calls or the emails or,
Yeah, and I guess I'm thinking if it was me asking for a grant, I'd know when the board meets and I'd know who the numbers are.
right. Would it be acceptable to the trust board and the commissioners if amongst ourselves we email or whatever this week, these changes, I get this back to you Monday, next Monday, and review it?
I'd like it before the meeting,
Yeah.
by Friday, if that's good, so we can make sure that,
Because they're pretty minor, but
yeah,
I would really like this, at least this part officially approved. Because I haven't got very many calls lately, but if I do, we're still giving them the old grant application. So, okay, we'll email the trust board, I'll get back to you by Friday.
and I do have just a few
Oh,
more.
sorry.
The next paragraph, it says, and starts with grant applicant sponsors. I would like to request that anybody who fills out an application get a response in writing. If the answer is no, tell them why, and maybe direct them to another source if there is another source. Just so that people know what their status is.
We struggled with
This email phone call.
with the no and why. And it comes down to, if it's really a crackpot idea, how do you write that up?
Just like you said it.
That's not politically correct.
Mr. Chairman.
If it really doesn't fit and is absolutely insane, that letter of why becomes very difficult. So,
It does, and I totally get that. I think it's a show of respect for someone who put in the time. And there's ways you can word something that's really tough like that, even if it's a very benign sentence because of something is so awful. I still think they deserve the respect of a response. That's what
you
I'm
might
thinking.
reach in your political journals and get us some of those canned statements that we could hide behind. That would certainly be fine. That's, we struggle with being.
And I don't think
politically
anybody
correct.
wants to hide behind anything. But I think it's a show of respect. If somebody puts in the time to write out an application, let's at least give them a response. Because we get those people at the next step and they're lost. They don't know what happened, they don't know why they didn't get it. So it would help them and save them time and save credibility, if they at least had a reason.
I think probably a classic example of that is, well, of course, you got the silos thing. And we explained, at silos, the wheelchair thing, we explained to them at the time. So they didn't get blindsided at all.
And there was no vote.
Yeah, there was no vote, and we said that's inappropriate. Let's go back to, I'm thinking even the last couple of years, playground equipment. We don't turn down a lot. Playground equipment, we turned it down. There was so many mixed emotions on whether it needed to be replaced, and the whole emphasis was on brand new playground equipment. The problem was, it was a flooding area. And their solution is just put a drain in and dump it on the street. That's not a solution. That dumps it into the borrow pit on the main street, and we kept, I think that one came back probably 3 times and could not get clarification. So it was kind of multifaceted on how we would write a denial on that. But we struggled with that one.
And I know that it can be tough. I know what I'm asking is not easy. There's a number of different examples. We can go back and forth again. I'm not going to. What I am gonna say is, I think it's a show of respect, and I think our citizens deserve that at the very least. Again, if you guys decide that you just don't wanna do that, and it comes back to this board, and it's a 3-2 vote, or 2-1 vote, I can live with that. But I am gonna sit on, I think there needs to be a process where every applicant is replied to, and they're informed why they didn't get a grant. They put in the time. So
Point-
it's
point
just
taken.
my
Email or
opinion,
phone call or letter.
and I'll let you guys hash that out.
Okay.
Number 8, on page 4, who will operate and maintain this project when completed? If it's on somebody else's property, that should include maybe a support letter or something in writing that the owner of that property is aware and is in agreement. Simple typo on number 7, on the last full line, you need the second set of brackets after designs. And then number 9, it says, who will provide future maintenance and management plan? I would say change that to what is the future maintenance and management plan? And if you are not going to fund maintenance, I would suggest putting it here in the goals and standards so that people know. And I would ask for photos in number 11, instead of is appreciated, maybe how about is required? Show us what you've done, because you guys should have a brag board, or you have a website coming. You should have photos on your website that say, hey, this is what we do for you. And then I would probably say on the last line, Debbie Randolph, Finance Officer. Maybe put contract there, because we do have a county finance officer, and I think that would be confusing for folks.
Yeah.
That's all I've got.
Can you go back to, I'm sorry, I missed it. Number 8, you said, oh, who will operate and maintain this project when completed?
Yeah.
What did you want in there? I'm sorry.
I think that whoever owns the property
Oh.
should have documentation for you guys that they're, 1, aware, and 2, in agreement of what's being planned for their property.
Okay, so on the previous page, on page 3, there is an item in there that says specifically, the project is on land not owned by the sponsor, private or public. Include letters of support from the landowner and copies of leases or easements
Perfect,
authorizing access to the project. So
perfect.
It's in
it's
That
there
covers
as a
it.
check off.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
yeah.
That got in there from experience in the past where it was a little, not absolutely clear as to who was responsible for the property. So that was where we really had to start tightening things up, because some of these grants are gonna come in for work to be done on other public land. And this is where you really need to have cooperation from whatever agency you're dealing with. So this, there's opportunities for this trust money to go in varied directions. And the issue is to make sure that it goes on, first of all, public land, and if it goes on private land, then everybody needs to understand very clearly how that works. So we try to keep this, so all this money is spent on some property that belongs to some government entity.
Yeah. It's a very good application, and I think you've already addressed some of the issues, so it's well done. I tried to read it from more of the mindset of the applicant than of somebody who, is immersed again in this, and certainly not to the degree you guys are, but we have our own immersion, and the public doesn't have either one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just that whole guidelines page is there for that exact reason, was it so applicants knew what the process was gonna be and how they were gonna be handled in that process, so that's why that's there, that's new, that one.
The goals and standards, this is excellent.
The goals and
Very
standards
clear.
and the application guidelines page wasn't, there wasn't one before, so.
That's so much fun.
That helps, yeah. Yeah,
I'll get the revisions to you by Friday.
thank you very much. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Do you generally have, the people that apply for these grants, do they generally come to a meeting prior to even applying for the grant to get a general feel of what's going on?
Almost always, yeah.
Okay,
They're really interested,
Yeah.
they're paying attention.
okay. It would seem to me it'd be a lot easier to come to a meeting and ask questions before you go through the whole process of filling out this grant.
You guys have done a lot of work, I appreciate it, clarified a lot of things.
I don't have anything.
Good work, you
Okay,
guys.
so we will get those changes to us, and then we'll get it back on the agenda for next week.
Somebody.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will move on to our 10:30 Hospital District Board fiscal year 2020 budget submission.
Thank you. Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Well, we're kind of hoping that we won't have to ask you for any money at all. Wouldn't that be a pleasant surprise? As you all know, the hospital is, we're negotiating for somebody to take it over, and so if that happens, we won't be responsible for maintenance, and so we wouldn't need any money at all. Now, we've got here a budget, we're asking for the maximum amount of mills allowed by law, and the understanding that if we don't need it, we'll just give it back to you, or you don't have to give it to us to start with. I'll go over it with you, it's very simple. Maybe would you like a copy? Sure. Yeah. I think we're very likely to reach an understanding with some healthcare organization. I'm not sure which one, there are several that are interested, but I think if it does happen, it's going to happen fairly soon. I would imagine probably get closed within a couple of months. So we should have a much better idea within just a couple of weeks, maybe, of what is likely to happen. Now, we have a carryover on there, as you see on page 2, how I did that. I did the same way as last year. We start with a carryover that we were expecting. Actually, that money, that amount will probably go down substantially. We have some bills from the Broadwater Health Center. We're responsible for maintaining that building. And they've put, I think, about $15,000 worth of bills for the mostly for air conditioning and heating, and some for the generator out there. So that 104 will probably go down substantially could be right away. And you see we were asking for the maximum number of mills, would be about $33,000. So anyway, we'd end up with reserve, if everything goes right, we didn't pay any bills, with about $135,000 reserved for the maintenance and repair. I don't think that's going to be anywhere near that much money we'll end up with. And I don't know how you do budgeting when we say we might not need it at all. You budget for it and then just keep it, and if we don't need it, fine. We look at the district as, we don't want to dissolve the district if a deal goes through, because it might come up that doesn't work out, and in the end, we want to have the district be able to come in and say, well, we have to reactivate again. So I would guess if we just kind of go in a dormant state and have one annual meeting or something, just to keep it in existence. Because to form a hospital district is quite a process. It has to go through a vote. You got to get a petition, go through a vote of the people, and it might not anyway. So that's kind of where we stand. Anybody have any questions or thoughts or comments?
I know you guys have put a lot of energy into this.
Not a lot.
I appreciate
It
your time.
is so simple, the budget. All we do is, a machine can do it. We just ask for the maximum number of mills, and which isn't all that much money.
I didn't mean just this, all the work you've done,
Oh, well,
not just this.
Oh, okay. What I worry about, I just worry sick of what's likely to happen, you know. But a year ago, when they have one bathroom in there, it's a big one that they use for invalids. and the concrete pipes underneath the concrete were eroded and leaked. So water came up through the concrete into the walls, and we ended up putting in about, I think it was $107,000 for that project. And you just don't know. I understand that all of the bathroom, or all the rooms that have, they all have their own bathrooms and toilets, and all the toilets are leaking. They're just out of date. My gosh, you don't know what's going to happen. It's scary. It's just spooky. So anyway, with luck, somebody will come in with. I want to tell you this too. We have our letters of intent that we're trying to negotiate, the negotiating position everybody's taken, Broadwater Health Center and the district board, is that the entity takes over, they're responsible for all liabilities. That includes the approximate $50,000 in registered warrants that we owe you payment on your investment. And so that's included in there, all of it. All of the liabilities now with the hospital, Broadwater Health Center's liabilities and our $50,000 in warrants come to almost $2 million. So we would say to the entities buying, okay, you give us it, you pay the entities, you pay it off, and at that point it was $2 million or 1.7 or 1.8, whatever it is. Then we will sell you for that price. We will give you the hospital building. All right. We don't want the building. We don't want to hang on to that building and be liable for it. And if we don't get rid of that building, I'm afraid it's going to end up gathering weeds around it, because it's good for a hospital building. It's not used for much else. If you drive through Montana, you'll see abandoned school buildings and abandoned hospital buildings here and there. Broken windows and weeds going up in them. We don't want to end up with that. So we want somebody to take it. Now, so if they could do that, and we would say, so you take all the liabilities, we'll sell you the building for $1, plus other valuable considerations, and that'd be fine. That's the board's feeling anyway. There's other people who say, well, we got to have that's terrible, it'd be politically unwise to sell it for $1. So the alternative, I guess, would say, okay, we say to the entity, you give us the $2 million, we'll pay off the bills and give you the loss. So then we have it say, we can say political cover gives it, says we sold it for $2 million. Wow, hey, good deal. You got a building that's falling apart and you got $2 million for it. Either way, whoever buys it, they're going to put up a certain amount of cash, we hope, for all liabilities, and that's it. And I think it'll work. At the end of that term, most of them, they talk, St. Peter certainly did, and another entity we've had serious discussions with. They kind of indicate that they would use the building and do the minimum amount of maintenance on it that they would have to do to keep it open. And then if it's working out and it's paying off and they're making a profit, doing a good business, then they would build their own building, a new building. Which seems ideal. It's just a win-win situation for everybody, I think. I'm really enthused about it. I hope it works. I really do. Who knows? It's terribly expensive, the negotiations. Luckily, the district has not incurred any liability, any legal or attorney fees, none. So that's great. The hospital, Broadwater Health Center, has incurred about $90,000 in legal bills doing this. There was an outfit in Broadwater, based in Atlanta, Georgia, who specializes in that type of handling those type of things, and they estimated $200,000 in costs. So I guess they're not out of line, but it is spooky. It's very spooky. So I guess that's about all I have to say. If anybody wants anything, or could I fill you on? I've been involved in most of the, from the start, all the negotiations that are going on. And anyway, I'm just really thrilled. I think we're going to have a good hospital. I do. Trust it. We're probably going to have a couple of days. Because that particular is one entity that we would love to have come in. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, and for all your work
You're welcome.
through the years.
So anyway, hope you don't have to give us any money.
Oh, what?
You don't have to give us any money at all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, you.
There they are. That's the second time this week.
County budget analysis department CIP submittals.
I put the CIPs on, I know that's something you've been working on, Daryl. We haven't seen too many, and we need those for Jerry.
I've got a couple back.
Oh, good.
I think, Ryan and Brandon submitted a few, and they knew that there was more to come. Let's see, who else? Oh, Mike Myers submitted some building stuff. So Mary's working on hers, hers would probably be the biggest, most likely.
Allison,
I did get some from
Allison
Allison.
just sent us one today, had $500 on that drill,
Oh,
and
okay.
there was another 1,000 there for something.
Oh,
I didn't get it in with the report yet, but I did print off the CIP report, so we could just kind of go through them.
And one thing we're talking about is not necessarily the budget CIPs, but the specifics to give to Jerry for his work. What physical capital equipment does each department have?
Yeah, I haven't heard on anything from anybody. I thought that last week, and nobody said anything, so I don't know.
We've got a few that have gone, come in.
So I just ran off both all the, it's cash budget, the expenditure budget, and the actual cash report, so we could see what's in the CIPs. I know I did hear from Allison. Mary just gave me a verbal and sent me a quick email and says she doesn't plan on anything in her quote CIP fund, but she doesn't have one. Well, she's thinking of road, weed, mosquitoes.
Right.
She didn't give me anything, she doesn't plan on anything at this point. She hasn't already spent this fiscal year. So I've met a lot of people, nope, don't have anything. I know I talked with Brandon Friday, and we talked about their vehicle and their weapons and some of those CIPs. So he goes, already got about, we're on .20 or something with his budget, so they've already made some changes.
and that generator is still in question, I'm not sure where that's gonna fall in. And I'm assuming that we'll include it in that.
And Mike was, got some things brewing, but he didn't have any numbers to give me, put in here yet. So this is just kind of a blank template so we can check, have, not have, waiting for, so we know where we're looking. Was just the purpose for me today. For those funds, because like I said, last year, I don't think anybody submitted anything. So I had to do budget amendments for those that did spend this year. And I don't think there's too many more in here that I have to cover, but I'll have to check as we go towards the end. Expenditures are first. And then what, if they've asked for any revenues. And cash is the last page, so you can see what's sitting in the CIPs themselves. And the only one that's in the negative is the detention center, and I'm working with Bob on that one.
Brandon's aware of that too.
Yeah. Okay. But, and that was, he couldn't remember what it's for, and it goes back to when there were separate funds, the cadaver cooler, the grinder, whatever they tied to the detention centers when that was done, versus coming out of the maintenance of the public safety budget. So this is gonna carry forward a couple of years.
So,
Okay.
So we're just gonna write it off.
Yeah, recent light of our computer thing that's going on, it's something we probably need to consider
Yeah.
for our CIPs. Start working on that, so when the time
Talked with
comes.
Josh,
Yeah.
and we have 24 computers in the county's purview that all are running on the old Windows 2010.
How many?
24. Now, this is the operating software for the Windows.
Right, OS.
That does include the computers themselves. And that list, some of the departments have already got their computers this year. So.
With money they already have.
With
in their
money they already
funds.
have their budgets.
Okay.
But Doug and I kinda were talking about this. He had a quote from Josh when he was looking at his two computers, and they wanted like 1,000 apiece.
Well, he went for the same straight Dell, went out online and got right from Dell 2 computers for $1,000. About half of what DIS was gonna cover, but what we kind of threw at him, you know, DIS will make sure you have everything you need, but I don't know if Dell's doing that with all the software, hardware that goes with it. So Doug was still gonna work with Josh more on that one.
Okay.
You know, I think it's great. It was the same Dell when we looked at the list that DIS could get. So I'm not sure, like I looked before for myself, they have just a standard price. They can't go and hunt the internet for special sales or something that another vendor might have and give you a different price. So there's still some work on that one.
So are you looking at Josh, maybe buying, us buying these computers and have DIS come in and do all the program work with it?
Which we kind of do anyway. We kind of are a partnered group. DIS and, well, DIS does it all. So yeah, DIS would take care of all of it.
Okay.
Order the computers. We ordered our printer cheaper than what DIS quoted us, but they still support it and helped us install the software. So he would just need to get with Josh and them and verify this quote, because they, you know, they can't help it, you know, just because they're a dealer, they still have their time and their effort involved, versus just ordering straight from whatever. I mean, kind of like go to Amazon, you know, you can get vendors, and you can pick from your choice of vendor to get them cheaper, but I just read the fine print. There might be something that they aren't providing that maybe DIS covered. This one will tell the time comes.
On this computer, you probably got my email. I was interested in buying a computer from TIS. And I have some money in my budget current level for that. Half of that's my federal EMPG grant, the other half is match. When I talked to and communicated back and forth, they're going to remotely install that and then put that software in and stuff like that. I've kind of looked at these other options. I think my choice, if it's okay with the commission, I'd either go with DIS because they will make sure it's done right. I'm not a real high-tech person, but to buy it through them, then they'll ship it down here and I'll plug it in down remotely and store, take everything off my old computer, put it in there, do all that. If you buy it off site, buy it from another vendor, you still have that $85 an hour charge for DIS to do all that. So I don't know. I just figured if I got it in my budget, I've been kind of saving money for that. I'm going to try to do it before June 30th. Get invoice for that. Just kind of my thought.
And I think that's important to bring out. Thank you.
I have no idea how much it would cost and stuff like that. But of course, we're getting the software and everything. If you buy something from Dell, you may not have the professional software that you need for this entity, local government.
Because like I told Doug, I said some of us have to be able to interface with Black Mountain.
Yes.
Because that's the biggest part of our jobs. And I don't know if he thought about that with this, although I just don't know.
Then we need all that.
Yeah, you know, if he's gotta buy, I think he's gotta buy a total of 6.
Yeah.
So he's worried about the cost. He can get it cheaper and maybe buy the software from GIS, everything that we need. I just don't know how that would impact his bottom line.
No, I don't know. I can just speak for myself.
Yeah.
I feel more comfortable going with them. Then they'll
I'm with
have,
you on that one.
they'll have all the spyware and all that security stuff, the proper amount. If you buy off, you may buy something from McAfee or something, but it may not be what they want for their system, for their server. And we're always being attacked, local government always being attacked. I get emails every day, somebody wants me to open up, open an attachment, something that's related to EMS or emergency management, DES or something, but if I don't know them, I just delete it. They're just trying to give you our system constantly.
And I know for the department heads, they probably need to get the software at best, the Windows software, especially if they need to work with Black Mountain to pull up reports, to approve time cards, get their budget reports and things of that nature. They all have to link into the cloud to get those. So if they're not gonna be supported, I'm not sure what will happen to their access to Black Mountain if it's not the same version. It might limit them.
Did you say there's 24 computers that are
That-
using
That's what Josh said.
the Windows 10 or the old?
The old Windows 10, they have
Old
the old
Windows
Windows 10. He didn't look at computers,
Right.
that's a separate list, it's just that Windows 10 software, hardware program.
Okay.
That Black Mountain says there's no support after 2020.
So we
I
got
have it.
24 of them that are not, that are on Windows 7 right now.
Mine's one of them, Windows 7 Professional.
That's what I have now.
Yeah.
Because it's actually
I
user-friendly.
just wonder how
Yeah.
much, if you went and bought a bunch of these, how much is it gonna cost you to have a GIS? Basically revamp all the software to fit the system with Black Mountain. Is that something Black Mountain could answer for us? Or does it make any difference to them?
It don't make any difference to them,
It's all gonna be.
it'll all be
pretty much up
something we have to work
Josh.
out with DIS.
So the list we have here this is from Josh at DIS, and this is, not all our computers, just those that are expiring or old, correct? Okay.
In the highlighted. And a couple of those, I know like health services, they got grants to cover theirs.
Right, they're not on here.
They're under the sheriff, under the tab sheet that was with the sheriff and others.
Oh, okay,
So there was a second sheet.
I didn't look at the second sheet.
Yeah, there was
Okay.
another tab that they had done.
Okay,
So there's a second page, and there's several at the sheriff's office, that have the old Windows 7. A couple of deputy desks, too. So we thought, depending on if it's a dispatch type of situation, could that be something 911 could cover budget? So
right.
those are some things too, when we get down to that, we'll have to ask Josh and Brandon. Not Josh and Brandon, but Brandon and Wynn, which computers they really need to update. And we thought at the same time, the software, if you're gonna do one, just do the whole suite. Those are computers are okay, then it's just the software.
Right, right. Yeah, some of these computers are not that old.
So you can just update the OS and.
And I think Doug was gonna get his ordered, or has ordered his computers to start for this fiscal year.
And he has an account to pay for those, though.
Yeah, he was gonna use his records preservation,
Right.
like maybe for Ann's and the one in the back
Okay,
for the recording. I think that's what he said Friday he was looking at, but he has to be careful with that one, cause I can't use it for treasurer. So. Yeah, he's got $50,000 in his records preservation. He said, so a couple of computers won't break me. So that's what he was doing with those, and I think he was gonna try to get them ordered this fiscal year.
okay.
I'm not positive of that.
And since he has the money in his budget, that's a little bit different than all the accounts that are looking for financial help to get those.
Yeah.
I think that's where we need to put our concentration, is those.
And so far, I haven't heard too much from him, but so we have our work cut out for us.
Well, I think if we can update the software and some of these newer computers, that we can phase in over the next couple of years, rather than take a big hit each
Yeah.
time. And then work out our CIP so that they have that money. It'd be a better way to approach that.
Maybe we can address this next week, as maybe our final step for this part of the budget anyway. What do you guys think here, Nancy, for the day? Okay. And to put together a long-range plan so that those who are still in waiting know where they're at. We can plan on that. Debbie, did you get a copy of the trust board budget?
No, I did not.
give you mine with all the chicken scratch. You could just give me back a copy.
Okay.
Um,
I think DES has $6,000 in there for CIP.
Yes. Yeah, we budget for you and for the sanitarian's vehicles in the
And
prior year.
I have an opportunity to apply on these EMPG grants, now work on the state fiscal year. Some of the counties do not spend all their money, so they have, for the next July, August, September, they call those reverted funds. Remember last year, we got some money for the propane 1,000 gallon, second propane tank up on the hill. It has to be a 50-50 match, and we match that with some CIP, or some, CIP interoperability. I have an opportunity to apply for the six I have now match with the federal six, just apply for that to get 12 perhaps for a vehicle, DES vehicle. So I'll go ahead and apply for that. We won't know until sometime, may not get it, but it's just a shot. Just keep trying to get all the money we possibly can. The logic of that, I talked to Brandon after our meeting down in Three Forks, is they have perhaps a used sheriff's office vehicle that they might have available. And then what the goal of that would be is to buy that DES fund, buy that from the sheriff's office, and that would give them more money to go towards one of their newer vehicles that they need in their budget. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. I have about 6 saved for that right now, CIP. Maybe we match that. Maybe we may not get a full 6, we may only get 2 or 3 of CIP money, or from EMPG money to match it and help the sheriff's office out. Every dollar counts.
I think that's brilliant.
But
That's excellent.
keep flooding away, trying to get money.
Not too many. We talked about waiting to replace the dump truck for road, because they have 3. So if they need to, they can just, each of them fill one and one can grade instead of all of them dumping if they needed to. So she's gonna put the insurance money she gets into the CIP, just let it sit there a little bit till which time they think they need it. That's why she just, a couple of different things, she just didn't feel she needed to budget anything yet this year to spend, so.
Yeah, I thought her submittals looked really good. And they're all separate funds, so it doesn't affect anybody else.
And I think that's what is confusing people when they see her spending. She's one person spending for 3 or 4 different departments.
Right.
So you gotta know which department she's under or doing business for that day. And so to start making all kinds of innuendos is just not okay. 'Cause I thought her budget compared to what last year, she was doing pretty good
Yeah.
with what she had budgeted and where she was at spending. Well, I didn't think it was anything outside the normal. And she was excited because the tonnage fee for tipping was actually down and less, under 10,000 last month. I think it was last month. So we don't have for June yet. She was excited because she felt that showed that that some of the pulling stuff out was working, keep that tonnage down, so. The real thing will be when summer's over, and everybody's done dumping, but I think it will work.
Yeah,
I'm
it's a
being
sound
optimistic. I'm looking at these at a glance, outside of the salaries, most of the budgets are doing okay, outside the few requests. I haven't seen anything that screamed out at me, other than the ones we've already kind of mentioned and we're working on.
When you put together the preliminary budget numbers, we'll see where the general fund sits. With all the separate funds, it's hard to know.
Yeah, it's hard to compute it, so I
So
can
it's
see
kind of
it dumbed down,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word. So I've been pushing, trying to get those numbers done. I told public safety I would try to get theirs done first. I know they're gone, theirs is the hardest. I just haven't crunching some more numbers for their wages, because all the bargaining agreements, the stuff that's Brandon told me about. So I'm trying to get that in there, and some of it is new for the deputies, so trying to come up with hours that's equitable, it's hard. So I'm trying to base at least, like if it's a weekend, half of them are on duty for the weekend, depending on graveyard, morning shift, I just don't know yet. I know from the past bargaining agreement, a lot of the standby, only 1 or 2 deputies use it, versus possibility of half, depending on the days of the week. Weekends, a lot of dispatch and detention, some use it, others don't. So to get a true gauge of the hours, when not all of them are utilizing that benefit out of their contract, coming up with an amount that doesn't put them in the hole, that I didn't budget enough, is the hard part. So I'm trying to be sure I cover all that realistically. Well, that's where I'm struggling with getting the budget done for the wages and all that. Because there's, standby went up to $2 for the sheriff's office versus the 1. They're now, as the deputies on graveyard, they're gonna get 35 cents more an hour than they were. But, you know, who's graveyard, what shift, if they're doing 10 hours, how's their, those are some things in my mind where I go, I don't know how to determine that. So I kind of went on half, you know, half in the day and half at night, trying to come up with that. It seems high, so that might be something else that we have to kind of look at. And, but if I don't, then they will be short budget if I don't account for those. So I don't want to do that. I did that my first year. I'm not going to do it again. Because I didn't account for those little things in their budgets, and it did impact them. So, start to throw numbers in, get the wages done, then go get the rest of the budgets. I got a good start Friday, and we're working on, almost finishing all the wages this morning. So we're getting going.
Well, to help you, I don't want to rush the CIP, but there are some updates we can give you for those numbers whenever you guys are ready.
Yeah.
So the victim witness advocate. We had a Board of Crime Control meeting on Friday, and we spent, I kid you not, 5.5 hours on one agenda item. It was the victims grants, which is our victim witness advocate.
Yeah.
That we were in a very small meeting room in the upstairs of Department of Corrections, and every seat was filled. Seats we did not have were filled. It was a full house. So, long story short, we are going to start all over with that grant. So the DOC staff informed the ARC at the time, so that's the group that reviews the budget, that they had gotten a message from the feds that the funds had been drastically cut. And so they had very little to work with. So what they did is they just slashed programs because they didn't have any more money. Well, after quite a bit of back and forth, there is more money, and it looks like ours will probably be fully funded. Might be a little bit less than that. It still needs to go through the process. So we can't hang our hat on anything yet, I would tell you, it looks very likely that we will be fully funded. One thing Corey had said in his comment to the board is that Brooke has been doing a lot of work with White Sulphur Springs, and on a side conversation, he said he expects that that will continue, and maybe we'll need to look at some kind of an interlocal in the future. We might want to use this year as the federal funds could run out at any time. What this does is it alleviates us the burden of having to pay for that position, so it's a good thing that we have this grant. But we might want to look at a interlocal with White Sulphur Springs. Doesn't have to be a lot, but if they are using our services, our citizens shouldn't be paying for Martin County services. So I would suggest we do that, but I would say for building the budget at this point, to be on the safe side, maybe instead of having that reduced by the 60%, maybe just take 10% off the revenue from that grant. If it is reduced, it wouldn't be by much more than that. Any questions? And I will also share with you, there's also a grant. It is called John R. Justice, so it's, or Burn Jag is what it's called, sorry. And what that does is it funds our drug task forces. So we have 7 in the state. You have to be a region, you have to have at least 5 partners to have a drug task force. We are in one with Lewis and Clark and Gallatin County. I think Mars part of it. It's called the Missouri River Drug Task Force. That is funded by these JAG funds. JAG has a surplus right now of about a little over $50,000. They're going to open up a grant for anybody to apply, and it's for anything you need for your, it's not for personnel. So it's one-time money. It's good for law enforcement, the courts, or drug treatment programs. Well, you know, we've got 2 of those that are looking at new programs, new computer programs, or other capital. So I'm really hoping that our folks will put in for that grant. And the other one is a grant. This is all Board of Crime Control. So the other one is, we have a misdemeanor domestic violence intervention grant. This is also under the victims grant. So victims grants are in different boxes. This particular grant has in it $125,000. We only have one entity that has requested money. It's Ravalli County's Sheriff's Office, and it's $27,000. That means there's just shy of $100,000 in that grant. They're going to put it back out for an RFP. I would hope that our Sheriff's Office will also be applying for that grant. We certainly have domestic violence issues in Broadwater County. Let's see what we can do to help the budget and also bring some money in for that. So those are just FYIs, but the biggest takeaway is I do think our victims grant for Brooke will be fully funded, and we won't know that for a couple of weeks, but for budgeting purposes, I think we're safe to just go 10% shy. I think we can balance with that.
10% to Corey, 90% the grant, and,
Yeah,
okay.
so if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them on that. And Brooke was there as well, so she knows that the numbers, Corey said, look like, from what the staff said, it looked like she was funded in the last go-around that redid what you have the letter for 100%, so same as last year. Corey thought it was 4% or $4,000 less. Staff questioned if that wasn't a difference in the match. So that's why I'm saying 10%, then we're safe. 10% less. So 90%, we're safe. And then the other thing, we didn't quite go through the whole list of recap. One of the things we need to start making some decisions on is the personnel issues that we have. And also PILT. So I just added everything that we know of people want from PILT, and we're at $786,725 so far. So we need to whittle that down. And entitlement share came in, we are going to get a slight bump of $12,457. Debbie, I can shoot you this if you want. You should have it in your email from Chantel. Do you have
I can
this?
get off the website, I think, because I didn't have an email.
I'll just email this to you.
Yeah.
How's that? And then you
Yeah.
have it for sure.
I tend to get lost on their lists, odds and ends of things, and you or Doug are the only one that I get it from. But let's go to the website.
Yeah.
I was out there, they didn't have that, so that's good to hear.
So did you get this allocation to the Department of Transportation? That was in the mail today.
Oh. So is this the regular? So this is state fuel allocations. Nope, this is new.
So that'll be more revenue for roads now.
Yeah, this is their state fuel, so this is their regular one, which has been about 61, so that they get 60, so they get 61, that's good. Good, $700 more. Okay, I'll make a copy and give it back to you.
Okay.
So, we have a vacancy coming. We have one of our prized employees who's chosen to move to Idaho. Biggest mystery in the world to me, but that's her decision. She's not listening to my pouting about her leaving. But we do have a vacancy coming, so we have some needs. We have a need for GPS, GIS, and talked about that being a position that would essentially be about 26 hours a week, could be a little bit less. We also have a need for a assistant in the finance office. That office is currently targeted, but it's also vastly overworked, understaffed, and that's an area where, especially right now with the targeting, we need to make sure that there's no mistakes that are the result of being overworked and understaffed. That falls on us. District Court would like an additional chunk of hours. I don't see where it's at in the budget, so we can talk about that. Right now, they have an assistant for 16 hours a week, they'd like 24, and an additional 6 weeks of full-time. A couple of issues with that becomes the question of health insurance. So I would suggest if it's a part-time employee standalone, that they don't exceed 30 hours because of the health insurance. If it is somebody who's already a full-time employee that just gives that number of hours to that department, then it's not a big deal. And then the public works assistant, Mary wanted somebody for roughly 8 hours a week. She does have an employee who is currently part-time. She would like to be full-time, and she is brilliant, according to Mary, on some of the work that she's been doing. She was hired to work the sites. She hasn't been needed for that, so she's actually been in the office. I asked Mary if working the sites and then giving her hours to full-time, if she couldn't fill the role of the public works assistant and possibly some of the GIS or GPS work, and she said yes. So that would be spread out between our strongest departments. Solid waste is not our strongest department right now, but it will be in the future. We have a good plan. Road and bridge is a very strong department. Weed and mosquito, they both put money in their CIP every year because they are so strong. Spread that out to this assistant, and I think we could take an existing part-timer, make him a full-time, and get everything we need for public safety. Mary is paid too much to be doing administrative work. I think this is a better way of letting Mary do what she needs to be doing, and I think evidence of that is the fact that she has 400 hours of comp time. So, if we did one employee to offset the employee we currently have and make them a full-time employee, part-time GPS, GIS, and part-time finance assistant, that's kind of a wash. Janae's 32 hours a week. This would be that position taking 40. And I was thinking we needed another employee, but I don't think we do, but we can certainly discuss that. So, what do you guys think?
Well, Deputy Michelle definitely needs some help. So,
Embarrassing, you can't find things because you bury it with more work.
yeah.
And with the spotlight on you, I think we're asking for trouble.
Mhm.
And you haven't done anything wrong, but you know, this is not the first time. They targeted you in the past. Almost seems to be an every year occurrence. And it's probably just because you work most closely with us.
It is. I'm your lackey, for lack of a better word.
Now, that's
For some people
say
mind,
it's not
yeah.
true.
No, I know it's not, but
Right.
that's what they want to say, so.
Oh, and one thing I should back us up, because I think I just made a mistake there. That GPS GIS is not taking into account the administrative work that is needed to share between sanitation and planning, so sorry about that. So I guess that becomes the question, how do we want to divvy those hours?
Yeah, I was just thinking about how we're gonna do that, because right now, the person that replaces Janae is still gonna do her work up in district court, right?
Well, that's what we're talking about, we don't know yet.
And still sanitation.
Right, well, that's to keep me from getting confused, that's why I did this.
Right.
So, yeah, what we need is a full-time assistant to planning and sanitation that also does GPS and GIS. Then we need at least 20 hours in the finance office. And then we need time in the district court office. So yeah, that is probably one full-timer, maybe one part-timer like Janae is right now, or 2 full-timers.
So can we take the financial office assistant and combine her with the district court person? That's the same person. And then take the sanitation planning, GIS, GPS, and work them in with public works, because Mary's gonna have to have the GPS, the GIS for her road work. So can that person be Mary's assistant plus sanitation and planning, or is that too much?
Not enough hours in the day, yeah. And I think Mary's plan makes more sense. She'd like to move Brenda Harris to full-time. She's already got her, and then she'd be dedicated to those 4 departments, and 4 big departments. So we could actually just take that out of the picture.
But Brenda could also do the GPS, GIS for Mary, right?
She could, or if we get some, depending on if she knows it. If she doesn't, and we hire somebody part-time for the GPS, GIS, to be a full-time employee with the rest of it, they could actually either work with Brenda or pinch hit with roads and solid waste and mosquitoes.
So if we split the district court in your office, does that give you enough hours?
Yeah, I think 20 hours would be plenty. Right now, we're just so far behind that it's looking, filing and organizing and hole punching and binders.
We'd be essentially switching Janea's current position from sanitation part-time to finance part-time, the rest of it stays the same, if we want.
But is that person gonna need to have, computer and, they can do that type of work for them?
Possibly, because they could maintain the phone lists, the fuel cards, the cell phones, that while they're not big tasks, they take a little bit of time out of the day. Fuel cards, what's the other one? County car, coordinating the county car, so it's still under Michelle's my purview with the checkout sheets and that kind of stuff, but just to take care of that we don't have to worry about. It's done, get the sheets, can help with claims, you know, we get our fair amount of claims ourselves to fill out. Yeah, having a computer would not be a bad idea. I've always thought about having somebody in our office, because eventually, one of my goals is to take all our new hire paperwork and put it on a computer. So when they're hired, they sit down, they fill it in, and we don't have to copy and have them manually fill it out. It's all done in the computer, we can print it, put it in a file, and we're done. So that might be an option later on down the line too.
So-
Computerize some of that.
You could probably, think you have room in your existing office for that person?
I think there is a desk in our office right now that's just become a place to punch holes and it's extra stuff I can't get in the binders. That desk is there, there's wiring in there, already on the side of the door. They don't need a huge desk, that one would work. You just have to kind of maybe rearrange where it's sitting, directional, maybe a little easier.
There used to be 2 people in that office, we could do that again. It would be more efficient to move the mail somewhere. Mike Myers has kind of brainstormed some
Yeah,
ideas.
that's the other thing we've been looking at.
But there were 2 in there, so we could put 2 in again.
We didn't have the mail machine and stuff extra on the wall. There's room there. The only reason Michelle's office is open right now, most of the time, is people need access to their mail. When we first started, we talked about trying to do like the post office, where we would access it from out in the hallway, or we could put it in there from the inside. So if we needed to go, they could still get at their mail. But at the time, we were looking at boxes and things, and it was just way too costly. But we didn't have Mike then, and he's pretty good at coming up with some things, solutions to things. So yeah, it's a possibility, because then it would go in Michelle's office very easily, because there's more room right in there.
Have you got rid of some of the boxes in
Got
our
rid of some of
offices?
our
I mean, there's things we can
boxes,
do,
yeah.
that it's not a big worry where to put somebody.
So yeah, there's a couple places it would work. Just the filing wouldn't be an issue, because there's other filing cabinets and places, so they wouldn't like to need too much, but just for personal stuff in their desk. Very clear this morning when we had a new hire come in, and it had already gotten buried with other stuff Friday. I couldn't find it at first, so I had to go back and look through, and it had gotten buried with stuff after. And it looks like we're not efficient, and that's, I don't like that. It looks messy. I got too many people coming in thinking, too much work, they look at it and they're just in shock, so.
So if we did, your office at 20 hours a week or 24, you tell us what you need. And then district court, at what the status quo, that is a full-time position with a couple of extra hours if they're needed. If you had somebody for 3 days a week, then that's 40 hours, because plus 16 is 40. If you did 20 hours a week plus 16, that would be 36. And then there'd be 4 extra hours for, seeing where the float needs to happen.
Could you guys use somebody to help with your filing?
Oh, we absolutely
Minutes and
need
things, so that,
Yeah,
help with filing.
so I'm
Yeah,
not the
I think
only
so.
one?
there's no more room on the end of your desk, is there, Mike?
No, I don't know.
yeah, if we could, actually, same with Janaea, she's given us 2 hours a week, but those are ended up given to somebody else. But if we had those 4 hours per week for filing,
And once everybody's caught up, then it could maybe help Nicole if she needs it.
right?
Or Lucinda to help Sean if he needs it.
Website,
Websites.
yeah, yeah,
I think it could be used. And they could get 40 hours very easily with all of us
yeah.
and not be bored.
Yeah, I know Val wants the extra hours, but when I look at the tax levy requirements report that we have, it is showing a $70,000 deficit for that budget. I think we need to, there's that grant, but I think we need to look at solidifying that budget before we add expenditures to it. And that is one of the few departments that has grown, actually. If you look at the last, 10 years even, maybe the last 5 years for easy, there is no department that has grown by personnel except for sheriff's office, district court. Are there any others? Solid waste with their new plan, that's different. Every other department has maintained the same number of personnel or shrunk. Public health, mosquito, weed, finance, you guys used to be 3.
Well, and in theory, so has Justice Court, because they don't have their community services coordinator anymore, so they've
Right.
shrunk.
Yeah. Yeah. So to hold district court, I don't think is unfair or a hardship at this point until we can figure out that budget. That's just my opinion, based on numbers. So, to make sure that I'm not confused, because I can very easily get confused, we're talking right now about adding 8 hours to Brenda Harris for the Public Works Assistant, a full-time employee, 40 hours a week for sanitation and planning administrative assistance, GPS, GIS, also to work with Public Works, and a full-time employee to give 20 hours to the finance office, 4 to the commissioners, and 16 hours as is currently for district court. Is that right? Am I missing any needs that were expressed?
So where are we at with sanitation?
If we could get, I don't think we're anywhere yet.
Yeah, because, he's only being part-time, like he really relies on that person to fill that gap.
Exactly. That's why I'm kind of thinking we can't keep it at 32. I think it has to be a full-timer. Personally, I do think that if they can start doing the GPS and GIS and be more dedicated to that department than bouncing, I think he'll be able to use them to do some of the busy work that he currently does at the contracted rate. I think long-term we should be able to save money and possibly continue to use him or look at what that looks like in the future. There's so many opportunities right now that are bouncing that we just don't know how those are gonna come together. And that's kind of where I've been at, wondering, he's gonna rack up the money and the hours during the summer, then I expect he'll be backing way off in the winter. I almost think we could even out, but I just don't know yet. But I do think if we could get him a dedicated assistant for those two departments, that it would alleviate some of his busy work that we're paying top dollar for.
Are we thinking that Nicole is going to be doing a little bit more of her own GIS work if they get the shared GPS between her and sanitation?
I'm kind of thinking from our discussion that we had 2 weeks ago, that this person would be doing the planning GIS as well. She didn't think, I think she said it would be, I didn't put how many hours. She had told us she expected a certain number of hours, and it wasn't that many, but I don't remember. Have you ever written down, Debbie? I have it in my notes somewhere, but I don't know where.
It would seem to me that if we got this person for sanitation, after a while, the Sean's hours are gonna go down. Especially when you get into winter, if he can train that person to do all the paperwork, then there's no need to have him come back in the winter when he's not doing any systems or anything. Some of his hours could maybe get cut down. And then once everybody gets caught up with the GPS and the GIS, then those hours are gonna go down too.
I guess part of what I was going with, my concern with Nicole is that she's wearing too many hats.
That's exactly right.
At the moment, and she's working too hard to try to cover all those bases.
I think
I
that's,
see it.
yeah, that's why we've talked about having this person be a administrative assistant to both departments, because she shouldn't be taking minutes or typing up minutes for the planning board. They don't see her as planner, they see her as secretary. That was so evident last Monday, it was glaring. We gotta help her to be seen as the planner. Also, with the rec board, you know, she's gonna be the administrator of that, she shouldn't be the secretary, but I expect that she'll be adding a couple hours to her day. When she's not in, when she's in the field, we need somebody who can hand out addresses. And that administrative assistant can handle that, can input the addresses, the GPS, the GIS. I don't think she has time to learn it unless she decides she wants to, and she said specifically it was the third thing on her list that she wanted to do, so.
I just see in the future that she's gonna have more and more work pertaining to subdivisions and all those types of things, and so she's definitely gonna need some help.
Yeah, I think so too.
So that's the part we don't know yet, right?
How much?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, and I think to start, she's at 0 right now. To take her up to a shared administrative assistant, you know, it's ideally maybe 20. Janaea right now is also part-time, but she juggles between vastly different departments. I think if we had one administrative assistant for just those two very closely linked departments, I think it would be more efficient. I think the work that person could give both departments would essentially be more than 20 each. And Nicole and Sean work very well together. If we decided to go the route of hiring a sanitarian, that would be an expectation that they work very well together. And if they didn't, I would see that we would pick one to supervise all of it. But right now, I just don't see any issues at all with Sean and Nicole working together.
So is Brenda Harris gonna go to 40 hours then?
That's what Mary would like. I think it's a good idea.
Well, you know, we'd like to get Mary in here and see what her vision is.
Yeah.
Go from there.
Brenda's already on staff, so there's no delay with that. So we could definitely put her on the agenda for next Monday and talk to her about that. As far as the other two, to get somebody in so that there's time for Janaea to help train them, we do need to act fairly quickly. It doesn't have to be done today, but we do have to make a decision fairly soon. To hire somebody, you're looking at least a 6-week process, maybe more,
Yeah, we should need to start the process, all right.
yeah.
Are we gonna leave the sanitation and planning, is that gonna be up to Sean and Nicole, or are we gonna have Janaea? Is Janaea gonna go through this person with district court sanitation and planning, or how are we gonna handle that?
The hiring process would not include Janaea, but the training process could. If she's still here when we get somebody on board, I would say that she being Janaea, would help train that person along with Nicole and Sean and Val.
Okay.
No, just
No,
Nicole
because only
and
Nicole or Sean
and
are
Sean.
training one, and then the other one, Val would have to take care of the district court finance person. And
Right.
this finance person does not have to be a finance person. It's just basically a filer.
I mean, if they went to school and had a year of college or something that they took an accounting class, it would help them, but it's not required.
Okay.
We had Lisa Gibson helping out for a while. As long as she can take, and she took instructions, she could put stuff away. But somebody that would know the numbers, what we're looking at, know debits, credits, expenditures, would certainly, it would be to their best interest to help them, but it's not required. If you know how to do your checkbook, you're probably okay.
And probably
And
the
then Shell and I
technical part
then-
would be the GPS, GIS for that position. And then if Janaea's still here, she could train that person in the district court. No, I'm sorry, I'm confused again. Finance, administrative support would not be GPS, GIS, so we'd just be looking for clerical, just an
Yeah.
assistant.
Yeah.
And then if Janaea's still here, she can train them for the district court piece, along with Val and Debbie and Michelle. Okay. I've even got it written down and can't track it.
You need a color chart.
I have colors with me too.
This is the hard part, things change and you have to adapt to the changes. Sometimes it's not always easy.
Right. Do we want to mull this over, maybe talk to these particular department heads, share with them the preliminary plan, and then address it again next week?
Yeah.
Okay? Maybe we'll have all the folks come and hear the thoughts.
Yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts,
Okay?
how it's gonna work out, and then, how it affects our budgets.
And I'm gonna work on wages based on, so we can see things as a preliminary basis where everybody wants with the extra hours, just so we can see, because we can always change it as we finalize. So this gives an idea where things are sitting for each of these departments as they submitted them, like Val with her hours and
With the COLA.
with the COLA and things where we're sitting. Talked with Mary, and she wants her part-time people to be eligible for COLA, which they are, because they were hired before July 1st.
Isn't it after 6 months? that they
That's,
get-
well, that's
'Cause
probation,
COLA's
but
for
they're,
the previous year, right?
but COLA is, for anybody who's on payroll as of July 1st is eligible. Unless they're seasonal and they don't work, but just or short-term, I mean, so they don't get any benefits and prorated holiday vacation. But if they're permanent and they're on payroll, regardless of the hire date, we have to give them eligibility.
We just learned that in our training.
Yeah. Because they were hired.
So,
Unless they're the short term, which by statute, we've hired them, they only work 90 days, they don't get all those prorated benefits. That's why I had to ask her, and she didn't even think about any probation increases for any of them. So that would most likely be what they get. Just depends, she hadn't got there, she hadn't planned for it. Because I was working on that Friday, so I caught her before she left.
Okay.
She said, well, it's only fair, so wanted to make sure there wasn't something that you had talked about when you guys hired them, that you get this or you don't get that, like, you know, in 6 months you get a review, or do or don't. But unfortunately, yes. Because I was in my mind, I don't know why I had it, they were just the summer. And she says, no, they're permanent. Slap on my face. Like, I don't know where it went. I just lost that somewhere in all the paperwork, so it does make a difference with their hours. And I know a couple of them, she said, yeah, they might stay, they might not, I don't know. So it's gonna be a morphine thing for her too, as this goes through.
Sure.
Could decrease staff and stay that way, or just don't know. Summer will be the truth, how that works out.
The other thing too that we'll have to address, just looking at the list, maintenance, raising Eric to 40 hours per week for the maintenance department. I think we can handle it. Mike turns in a balanced budget every year. And he's made tremendous cuts over the years.
He's looking at changing some of the lights to LED, that'll save him even more money
Yeah.
in the courthouse costs,
Yeah.
or it should in theory. So it's like to sit in the dark to save money too, so. But he's very tight on that kind of stuff.
Right. So, I do have some questions on the trust board budget, on if we can do some of their questions, or some of their grant requests, but that can wait till next week too. And maybe it should give you time to review it.
Monthly advertisements?
Do you see the numbers?
Holy cow. Do they have that money available to?
Yes, they have 1.2 million, but that's not necessarily that's for funding recreation per their charter. Those are some high numbers.
Boy, howdy. Outside of when they were working on the docks back in 15, 16, 14, 15, they haven't spent that much in 3 years.
I don't think they're not anticipating on spending that amount. They just, that's just what they have available, they wanted to put it in there.
The problem is you don't do it that
It's
way.
cash on hand.
We don't, and that's why I want Debbie to kind of mull it over and come up with a best practice, but we haven't done that in the past. Just because you have the money, you know, put it in your budget. What we don't have a lot of is checks and balance with the trust board, and I think we need to have that. We need the contract with Debbie, and we'll be talking about a claim coming up here. What's the contract look like for, Simon Peter? There's $25,000 there, and that's more than the city pays for their contract attorney. We need to start seeing those contracts. Mina's been hired. That should be coming to us by law. We haven't seen it. Support all the work they've been doing, but we need to have more of the checks and balance, because so many people are starting to ask questions, and this commission doesn't have the answers that we should. So, I would like Debbie to just review it, maybe talk to Bob, and then come back to us with a better suggestion.
Well, I could understand it, I guess, if there was a project, a huge project, that you needed some of these costs for. Say developing all the campgrounds in the silos or something, that you would need, the scope of it would need, but postage, $500?
Well, they wanted to hire a facilitator to hold a public hearing. Well, how many boards hire a facilitator to handle a public hearing? None. That should be the board talking directly with the public, not having a third party intervene. So there's some questions I have, again, checks and balance, that we need to address. The rec board had a public hearing, the planning board had a public hearing last
I
week.
have a public hearing every year for the budgets and things.
Right?
I don't hire anybody to do it for me.
Right.
You don't hire anybody to do it with you guys have one. Seems odd. Outside the norm.
And that's what gives me pause.
So where would they do with this 876 that they didn't have? Where's that money sit?
They have a restricted cash line item in their budget as well as their regular cash. Last time I understood, when the auditors kind of talked over it, they can only have 2 million sitting on hand, so they kind of have to reserve some of that for special projects. That's why some people have gone and they've donated to the Rod and Gun Club or the docks or things like that to benefit recreation stuff in the county, to help keep their funding down. But I haven't seen them request for a special project in a long time, or a cash drawdown from the trust in a long time. Those are those letters you used to have to sign because they wanted for specific. I haven't seen that in the bank accounts that have balanced over the last year. I don't think I saw anything this year where they asked for a drawdown or specific. They just used some of their cash on hand because they had so much of it. That's where this all search and rescue donated for the building remodel for search and rescue came from. And that's about the only one that I know of that had anything tied to it this year. It's like nobody put in grants, like, that's the same grants they're talking about.
Well, if they're talking about, if they're talking about a big project at the fairgrounds, then there you're gonna need a facilitator, because you got the fair board, you got 4-H, you got the city, you got the county, all involved in that project.
But that
And then
wouldn't
you have the
be,
cost of the building, which has to be a prevailing wage. So you're talking, that money could disappear real quick. I don't, maybe it would happen in next year, I don't know. That's what seems to be what the conversation is.
if you were to do a fairgrounds master plan, yes, you would probably have a Jerry Grabens as a facilitator who has experience in that. And yes, when you have your public hearing, Jerry would say, hey, this is what I found, this is what I learned. But you wouldn't hire a separate facilitator, and that's what Steve was saying. You would be using somebody who's already under that umbrella of working that master plan. But every time you hold a public hearing on something, you don't hire a facilitator. That's already encompassed in the project. So that's where my caution is with that. It is two different things. So that facilitator would not be justifying $3,000 for advertising meetings.
So where would your lawyers be at in that? Between the city and the county?
That'd be between the $40,000 for professional and contracted services. But again, you wouldn't necessarily have an attorney involved in a master plan. We didn't for the silos. and that was far bigger than the fairgrounds would be. And Peter Simon should be done, in July at the latest for Rod and Gun Club. So there shouldn't be anything more with that land acquisition project for attorneys. And if you look at the past years, those are jumps that are astronomical.
And the thing is, they can always pull that money out with a budget amendment, right?
Correct.
And then there's a public process.
Are the auditors gonna look at this and question that?
They might. Unless I can document in my notes, in the budget prep, what the 86,000 comprise, the 876,000 comprises of, then it's easier to see and know. And that's where some of these budgets, these huge jumps, without knowing some of the specifics that they're looking for, it's hard for me to look at and say, what are you doing it for? I can see if your utilities goes up, so utilities goes up 10%. So that when we go back in future years to look, why did we agree to that? I can go pull the budget notes up and say it's because the utilities went up, or they want 30,000 for this project, 20,000 for this project. Then I can balance it and tie it into, so we looked at it and didn't say, oh yeah, just give you what you want, and then, oh, leave it sit there. It shows we're monitoring and we're doing our due diligence.
So what happens if they move that in there and it just sits there?
It just sits there. It gives them the authority to spend. And what sometimes people do, when they look at their budgets, they say, oh, I have the authority to spend 870,000, I better go spend it, or I'll lose it. No, that's why it's good to keep what you've got budget to what you need. It doesn't take out any reserves, and it's better to sit in cash where it earns interest and different things that Doug can divvy up, rather than losing money just, so it doesn't go anywhere, but it creates the illusion that I've got unlimited cash to spend, and you don't. That's been my only fallback when people look at a budget, and I still hear it, end of the year, oh, well, I didn't spend all my office supplies, I better go buy a bunch of supplies. Michelle gets the claim, she's already gotten some. Well, if you need it, great, but if you don't, buy as you go, and you shouldn't have to worry about end of the year blowing it up. It's just, unfortunately, it's just been a habit that has been ingrained in so many of our brains that it's hard for us to think differently. But that's how our reserves will go up there, by not putting it in as an expense. It'll keep our reserves higher. Especially when we do bottom line, we shouldn't have too many, and that's why it's a 4-year look back as well, because then you can look at your pattern and know high peak years and say, okay, well, next year might be a little higher because I have this extra mailing for postage type of things. And that's why the 3 years is there. But some people just don't, they don't get, budgeting is not easy for everybody, contrary to belief.
Well, the thing is, they're gonna move 846,000, and they've still got 100,000 they didn't use from last year.
Well, no, they budgeted the 100,000. See, and these are budget I put in, because they didn't budget anything last year. So the numbers we're showing in the 18-19 column are ones I did with my budget amendment, or should have. Or like, they went over. So when I did the budget amendment, the contracted services, I had the 27 in there, because that's what they had in 17-18, but they spent more than that. So they've spent, since I put in the budget to give them spending authority for those line items, because they had nothing in any of them. I just don't think it was, that's where some of these slipped through the cracks last year, putting any budget. And then I had to go and give them spending authority, and I did based on what they had spent at the time, not knowing if they were gonna spend more. This golf course,
What's that?
so golf course is gonna close? Is that what that?
No, what does it say?
They just have golf, closed probably last week.
Oh, I think that's the,
Contract.
yeah, the contract is done as of a couple weeks ago, probably. Yeah.
I'm glad I asked.
Yeah.
I'm not a golfer, so I wouldn't have known that.
I'm not either, although I do golf. Nobody would ever call me a golfer.
We bat a ball around. That's not even the right word.
We call it garbage golf and the high score wins.
I'd have to have a handicap. I might just send Debbie an email and just ask her, when we're working on the budget, kind of, so I can put it in the notes.
Well, I would feel a lot better if it mirrors the last 4 years, without those high jumps. And again, I think we need more communication, more checks and balances. And, I would feel more confident.
Well, like for $500 for postage, that could be done and spent, I could see if it's a special mailing. So I can put notes, then we know it's a special mailing for something. Printing, they're gonna print some special flyer, kinda like we did the newsletter. So there's gonna be extra printing, just so that we know we looked at it and understand why it's $500, where over the last 4 years, it's not even reached 100. That's just kinda where I go to justify, and it helps everybody understand what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And that it is reasonable, it is fair, it is a project, it's not just me making a typo. Because that's happened before, with the Black Mountain system, they don't take the decimal, it rounds. So if I try to enter a decimal, it just kicks it to the next field, or makes the number that much bigger. And that's one thing I've had a hard time getting with in the budget module, because there's been some, I don't watch it. That's caused some problems. It's the one system I've ever worked with where they don't use a decimal system. I just don't know why they don't do that in the budget. So I have to look at it and just round it up myself to the next nearest dollar, so that I don't make that key entry error.
I think that's all the questions I have for today until we're ready to make some decisions. Maybe we can do that next week to help you get ready for the preliminary budget.
You know, by then, I'll have all the numbers in and be able to fine tune it and send you guys copies to look at too, so that as we go and have questions, we know what changes to eventually make when we're there. That'll get time with everything to get in with the preliminary. With our basic requests right now.
We had some PILT money set aside for the hospital last year.
It was in the budget for possibly spend $100,000 out of PILT.
So that's still in PILT? Hasn't been spent over there?
No, you guys haven't given it to them or for anything yet. Mm-mm.
Okay.
And I started working on the next request for this year's. So when we get ready, because like last year, we still had extension budget to spend out of there for their utilities. We aren't gonna have that this year, so I'm gonna put a preliminary request for the PILT for this year together too. So you can kind of see with all the requests that have come through where you're at. Like Laura's already done, she's already done most of the work. I'll just put it in my worksheet and I keep track of it for you, because it factors all that in there. At a snapshot, easier than looking at the reports. Because it tells you a little bit more on what and why, and Then if you don't, kind of gives you where you're gonna sit.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Deb.
Thanks, Debbie.
Okay, let's see, we have an AL here, what would be the minutes from June 10th, 2019.
Move to approve as submitted, Mr. Chairman.
There's a motion made, and second to approve minutes from June 2019, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. See, approved claims. In the amount of $202,397.78.
Second motion.
Motion been made and seconded to pay claims and set them out, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Let's see, these are other claims, I guess, need discussion.
Oops.
From the Sheriff's Department, MSPOA per diem. For when, for instructing at the MSPOA conference, is that what this is for?
No,
Or
he
attending.
was instructing the coroner's basic at the academy. So the only question that was raised was the first two lines here. The rest of it is fine. MSPOA is, I think it's an essential thing that our sheriff and undersheriff, and I think our captain all belong and attend the conferences. It's networking, it's where you learn, share ideas, bring them home. But when you are taking your time to volunteer to train at the academy, that's a great benefit to the academy, but it's not necessarily of the same type of benefit to Broadwater County citizens. Broadwater County citizens are not taking benefit from a Ravalli deputy learning coroner basic. So why are Broadwater County citizens paying for that per diem? I think that should be paid by either the academy or the entity that's holding the coroner basic training.
Could he just put a claim in with MSPOA then?
Absolutely, and I absolutely support travel per diem for MSPOA. I think that's really important. And I've never challenged that before. Parallels would be, if you were gonna do a statewide training on health food safety for Rocky Mountain Development Council, would that be something that Broadwater County would pay for, or would Rocky? I would say Rocky. My day Friday at Board of Crime Control, my per diem will be paid by Board of Crime Control, not by the citizens of Broadwater County. So there's a lot of parallels.
I would almost, I'd think that would be reasonable to have them reimburse you for that.
I,
Send it back.
you send it back and just ask him to maybe take off those top 2 lines.
Okay. We need a motion on that.
I will move that we ask that, instructional, trainings for other entities be paid, per diems be paid by those other entities.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion is made and seconded to have the other entity pay for the per diem incurred on the 16th and 17th for the MSPOA conference. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Yes,
What's the balance on that?
I think it was gonna be 18 and 11, is that what it is?
6 plus 12 plus 5 plus 6 plus 12. Yeah, 18 plus 23, whatever that is.
$41. The next one is Allison Costco's, travel to Billings for a conference. She had requested mileage.
She, Debbie alluded to this a little bit, we've had a number of claims come in, end of year, extra money in the budget, so they're spending on things that people wouldn't ordinarily be spending on. That's not this, but that is why there's so many, and they've kind of been piling up. Ellison, has a vehicle in her department, so our personnel policy says, if you have a vehicle in your department, or if there's fleet vehicles, and they're available, that if you do not want to use them, you have to get permission from the commissioners in order to get that mileage reimbursed. That wasn't followed. Her issue was she wanted to make sure she was in a car that she knew, her own, because she is pregnant. She did turn in another claim without the mileage because she didn't follow the personnel policies. Because we are just getting back to following our personnel policies with this issue, I would suggest we go ahead and pay the mileage for her. Had she emailed us before travel, I think the 3 of us would have said, absolutely take your own vehicle in this situation. But it's not right to bypass the personnel policies without bringing this forward. So that's why it's brought forward. My question was very benign to Ellison, can you tell me why? And she did, she explained it. So I would move that we pay, and I don't even know that we need motions on these because they would be approved in the accounting office and then added to the list. But I'm okay paying this, I just wanted to make sure that we had it covered, that you guys are good with that too.
And I would be in favor of paying this because the main reason that she took her car was because she
Right,
had some medical issues.
right,
Right.
all right, I understand. So we're just gonna pay this submitted, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll have to sign that. And then this one here, the Chevy Tahoe purchase.
Oh, you know, and I asked Brandon to send me the minutes and all that stuff, he probably could get it done before he left our conference, so he is going to do that,
Okay,
yeah.
Michelle couldn't find it,
Okay.
and so she wasn't sure if we had voted on it. I didn't recall having voted on it. It's not to say it didn't happen. I remember some things very well and other things that, you know, we take care of very quickly sometimes pop out of my head.
And we discussed that, I discussed that with Michelle and Debbie Friday. And I think she didn't go back far enough.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because we went back, this was like February or March,
I
wasn't it?
remember.
It was quite, I remember the discussion.
Mhm.
But she went through the minutes, but she only went back to April.
Okay,
So I think that it was probably in earlier minutes from what she saw.
Right.
okay.
And then this one here is, repairs to silos, recreation, fire range, grate, picnic tables, and paint. And
Yeah,
my
so,
impression is is the manager's, is SJS's responsibility.
it's not, it's the manager's responsibility, and we are the manager. So, this was accompanying the claim, and it does say right there, management. We're the managers, we're the managing partner with Bureau of Reclamation. JSJ is our concessionaire. So when they pay that 10% on what they rent the gazebos, the docks, and the campground spaces for,
I understand now, I see.
yeah, that's a
My
sinking
impression
fund.
was that should say if it was could be the concessionaire, it would say the concessionaire, not the manager.
And I only get it because BOR's beaten me up a dozen times, because I also got hung up on who's the manager. So, yeah, it is confusing.
So are we still, is she are we still maintaining a collection for aluminum cans down there or not?
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. That I don't know, if she has, I think she's very dedicated to recycling, so I think there probably is, but I can't tell you exactly, because I haven't seen it. But she did have some yahoo dump their garbage and fill up 2 of her containers for campers. So that may be a long-term problem we have to do something about.
So I guess now that I read this, I got some other questions here, and I don't know how she's been handling this. But I thought she was taking care of this stuff. It says that I would agree to all this stuff up here about the tables and stuff destroyed by fire. It says the outhouse will be checked. Manager shall be solely responsible for the cost of materials used for cleaning of all such facilities, as well as the cost of pumping the outhouse as needed. And she's been doing that.
Yeah.
So, and manager shall check daily and maintain and supply a toilet paper. That means we're supposed to have somebody out there to do that.
Yes,
Well, we do through the concessionaire contract, so that's our responsibility, and we put it on her to actually do the boots on the ground work as our concessionaire.
This is really confusing.
So that whole thing there needs to get rewritten some way.
And we certainly could.
The
Yeah.
commissioner shall be responsible for all of this stuff, and then, I'm not even, I guess we get enough money to cover that. But if that's gonna continue to go up, then our 10%'s gonna have to go up.
And she, every year there is actually a balance. We didn't have her income from last year when we were doing the budget. That came in later, it was about 12,000 for the second half of the year. So I think, that was with the claim. I'm not sure if that's from the BOR contract or the silos contract. So the BOR contract is just between us and the BOR, solidifying that we're the managing partner. And then there's the silos concessionaire contract with JSJ that details what they're supposed to do within that consignment agreement. This, from the looks of that, is probably the BOR contract. And I will say, from the years working it, we get far more from Sharon and Terry than we pay for, or than the 10% covers. It's been a really good way to work this through the years.
Yeah, so the way this contract's written, I mean, that's very confusing, where, it says.
But this is employment of manager.
Right.
Which means the county is employing this manager. So the manager shall act as the exclusive agent in the county. So to me, anything that in here says management, that's SJS.
That's how I read it.
This
that
is
one,
this
that
is the
could be-
Broadwater SJ.
I didn't bring mine, but does that what it says up here? Who is the manager when it
And
says here?
JSJ Incorporated doing businesses, towns in Canyon Ferry Lake, KOA here and after referred to as manager.
Then that should be changed to concessionaire in the future, because that is a product of the BOR management partnership contract. So this would have to complement the first contract. So that would be one that I would say is just sloppy, needs to be changed. And we certainly can upgrade any of these and had a plan to do that, we just ran out of time. But that is dependent and subject to the BOR Broadwater County Management Agreement contract.
Well, this contract refers to the county as the county and JSJ as the manager.
Yeah.
And in here, it has this is the same phase as that, except it's the exact same page.
Oh, okay, so this
She
came
is
from
the
that.
manager.
She isn't.
By this contract, by that line in the contract, she is the manager.
I get it. I get what you're saying 100%. And we can go get the other contract. But this is a secondary contract to the BOR Broadwater County Managing Partner contract. That contract details that we are the managing partner for Broadwater County of the Silos Recreation Area. Because we don't wanna put our own employees managing that campground. We have a concession air contract with JSJ. This one should bounce off of the main one. The main one is number one, this is number two. What it says in the main one defines the entire relationship. If this is contrary to the main agreement, then this is an error, not this main agreement with BOR and Silos, the county.
I don't know that I agree with that.
Well-
Because it says, the very first line says the political subdivision state of Montana hereinafter referred to as county, and JSJ doing business in Townsend Canyon, Ferry Lake, KOA hereinafter referred to as the manager.
Okay, let's do this. Let's table this discussion. We'll go get the BOR Broadwater County contract and talk about all of it together. But we do have some other business to take care of, and then we can come back to
Okay.
it, because that's gonna take us a little
I'll
while.
agree to that.
And I wanna leave and go get my contract, so that I have everything in front of us. But to ask Sharon to pay out of her own pocket for the Silos campground, we wouldn't ask anybody else to do that.
And then this is, secretary for the trust claim.
Yeah, so the question I have on this is, we have not had, any time we have a contractor, and we ask them to come to a county commission meeting to talk to us about what it is they're working on for us, we expect that we're gonna pay them. Jerry Grabentz, Sean Higley, quite a few. We do not, Debbie is a contractor of the trust board to act as secretarial and finance for them. There are two line items here where she is being asked and paid to come and sit through commission meetings, even though there's nothing on the commission agenda for the trust board secretary. Our relationship is with the trust board. She is an extension of them. So I do not believe that the citizens should be paying for anybody to come to commission meetings. Anybody is welcome, she's welcome, anybody is, but we should not be paying people to come to our meetings. We don't pay overtime for, if Debbie, we didn't pay her overtime to come here and sit in the meeting with us. So just, I think it opens a can of worms if we start letting boards hire people to come to our meetings as a paid employee.
So we're talking about the commission meeting and the rec board meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the rec board should also be working with the trust board. Debbie's welcome, but she shouldn't be paid.
I haven't seen that right.
It's also a contract that the trust board has It is not something we've been privy to. The law says that every contract comes to the commission. If that contract says we shall pay you to attend commissioner meetings, we need to address that. But again, if we do it for one, we do it for all. I just think it's a very bad practice. I think it's a misuse of the people's money. And I don't think we should be doing it. I don't think we should open that can of worms.
She's on contract, not an employee of the trust board.
She's on contract.
She's on
correct.
contract.
Yeah.
Does the rec board have minutes of their meeting?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to look at those minutes before I sign this. Do we have those, Adam?
They should be in the clerk recorder's office,
If they've been submitted.
if they've been submitted. Nicole should be able to get those. I think she'll be in today around noon, so she should be here by now.
And the commissioner meeting, we don't know what the dates of the commissioner meetings are?
Well, we do, because we have the agendas, but we, as a commission, have never put on the agenda that we wanted to speak with the secretary of the trust board. If we have, just like today, we have the trust board, submittal of the budget, etc., that was with the trust board members. That's who we appoint. Anytime we have the trust board on our agenda, we would be working with the trust board members, not with the secretary. And in many of those, I think all of them, there hasn't been an agenda item for the trust board to appear, except for today and yesterday, which was an error.
So do you
and we got that
anticipate,
early.
will our next claim have another one of these on it from them?
I expect it will, and that's why I want to address it. I don't think that's correct. I just don't think it's raised the people's money. So yeah, I could have more, but it's, I guess I've said my fill, yeah.
What do you think, Darrell?
Well, I guess I would, before we deny it, I'd like to hear what they have to say about the reason, the reasoning behind it.
Okay.
And,
I was kind of hoping it would be brought up while they were here, but,
Yeah.
It's
We
the
can-
end of there.
We'll
do it next Monday when
we'll
they
bring it
come
up
back,
next Monday when they come back.
and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Oh, and then here we have a receipt for a floodplain application. Renewal reminder notice, Federal Communications, Public Safety, Homeland Security Division. And this was the letter from MDT about the gas tax allocations that Debbie took a copy of it.
Okay,
And then we have this National Business Furniture Catalog. That's it for the
Right.
mail.
keep that, just take it back to the office.
Throw it away, we buy from the state.
Well, do you want a 5-minute break and I'll go get my contracts?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. So this is the BOR contract. And again, this, it's just being involved in it for so many years, but this is the management contract between BOR and Broadwater County, that's us, the commission. And then what it has is basically all your whereases, and you can read through this. But the county will coordinate, the county will manage, the county will develop and implement, the county may construct, the county, this is all our responsibility as the managing partner. This is the contract with BOR, this is number one. The other is how to do this without the county commission actually being boots on the ground. So the misuse of the word manager, it's bad habit that's been adopted through the years. And if you even look at our analysis of the campground just from last year when things blew up like they did, the word manager is used again. It's just sloppy use of English, but this is the guiding principle that guides everything else. The reason we set up the sinking fund years ago, before my time, was specifically for those kinds of repairs at the silos. The docks are not Sharon's personal docks, therefore it shouldn't be Sharon's personal bank account that pays for repairs to the docks. The same can be said of the gazebos and the campgrounds. Daryl, I don't know if you want to read this, but this was put together last year as kind of a synopsis.
So if that's the case with it, then this whole contract, the county is responsible for everything in this contract.
That's
So,
exactly right.
so if you interpret it that way, then we're also responsible to pay the camp host.
No, I think it actually specifically says in here that BOR pays for the camp host.
The manager pays for the camp. Manager shall pay propane for the camp host.
Propane, yes. She does pay all that.
Manager shall pay for the services of the camp host. The camp host shall be on site from May 15th to September 15th of each year. Page 5.
Well, maybe she does. I thought that BOR did, but they're not actually paid, is my understanding. They have free use of the campground and the propane. Years ago, not too many, BOR actually did advertisements, so regardless. I do know that Sharon does actually direct the camp host, so maybe she is now the one who is responsible for hiring and paying them any fees that she chooses to pay them. But she does have a really good camp host, which is to our benefit regardless. I don't see anything specific in here to the campground host. That's not to say it isn't in here, but regardless, it helps Sharon, JSJ, do the job that we need done.
Excuse me.
And that is not paid from the silo sinking fund.
For what?
The silo sinking fund, that's the 10% that we take from the silos.
That's
That
what
is,
this is paid out of.
right, yeah, that's for capital, not for, it's never been used to pay for any campground hosts.
So do we maintain the insurance out there?
I think
Liability?
that's, I don't know. Let me check.
But I'm just reading here, it says the manager shall maintain the liability insurance of $1 million.
That very well may be part of our liability insurance. Because I can't imagine, and what I would bet is we both have it, both BOR and the county. Because if somebody wanted to sue, they're gonna go to the deepest pockets, that's the federal government and the county. County will require all contractors and permittees to carry such public liability and property damage insurance as is customary. So my guess is, JSJ has it, we have it, they have it, BOR. County shall require all contractors and permittees to assume full responsibility for any and all liability arising out of or in any way connected with their activities on or uses of federal lands. So, yes, JSJ has insurance. Both BOR and Sharon are open to updates of both contracts. We really couldn't do it last year. Once January started, things just, we ran out of time. I would suggest maybe we, in earnest, take care of this in September as soon as the campground closes. And then take care of the ward manager. And make sure that everybody has a clear understanding of how this whole relationship works.
So if we redo this contract, we had talked earlier about making sure that there's a building on site, not only so that if Sharon didn't have the contract, people aren't running to the store all the time. Is that just the camp post?
No, what you're getting to is the master plan. So the master plan, once it's engineered, it will put together phases. Phase one, my understanding of what's needed more than anything is dredging of the bays. That's phase one. That's something BOR is open to, that's something Walleye Unlimited is interested in, so it would be pretty easy for the Citizens Advisory Group to come up with the money for that. Phase two would probably be the fishing area and also maybe some cabins. I'm changing gazebo one, because right now you have people swimming in the boat lane, getting to and from the docks. John Hedstrom was very vocal in our meetings about that being a safety issue. Building a store or facility out there would be expensive, and that probably is not one of the first phases. If we want to actively look for another concessionaire, what we have told people in the past is you're gonna have to come up with a way to direct people not to the store with complaints, but to some other place. Anybody could do that. But they would have to have that safeguard in, because you are setting up a private business for failure if they become and maintain being the complaint zone. And people walk in and they're told, well, we don't handle that. Again, it's telling your public, it's giving your public the runaround, and that's not something we wanna do. It is a very, very good fit to have the KOA store as Silo Central. It is anyway for the neighborhood. It makes sense that it is for the campers.
So I guess we go back to this claim. Do we wanna pay this claim, or what do we wanna do with it?
To not pay that claim at this point is going backwards on set precedent of many, many years. That sinking fund, that's the 10% that we are paid from the Silos Recreation Area for the rent of gazebos, camping spots, and the docks, has always, and it's in our contract, gone into the Silos Fund. And that has always been used to pay for repairs to the silos, electrical needs, well, I have a list here. Repairs to the bathroom, gazebo 1 and 2 shingles that needed repair, the north wall of gazebo 2, pay post that needed repairing, bathroom door handle, pump house door handle, toilet seats. These have been paid in the past. If we all of a sudden, without even talking, without redoing the contract, say, yeah, we're not gonna pay anything anymore, I think we are doing a huge disservice to the county, a personal disservice to JSJ, and putting the county in liability risk. And that's why it's so important when we set precedent. But that was set up, that sinking fund is set up as part of the whole contract that started the silos and the trust board years ago. In fact, I think I saw it in Debbie's paperwork today in the in what she brought us. I also have this file on the silos, if anybody ever wants to look through it. So it's the Canyon Ferry Reservoir Montana Act of October 22, 1998. That's what established the sinking fund. It established this whole thing. And it's in the bylaws for the trust board.
Why do they call it the sinking?
It isn't called the sinking fund. All those funds are always called sinking funds. So CIPs are called sinking funds. I don't know why they're called that. When I first heard it, I thought it was really kind of a funny term. I thought it was comical because of sinking in the lake. But it is actually a term that's commonly used with repair and maintenance funds.
I guess what it brings forward is this really is very poorly written.
Yeah. again, if we want to update it, let's update it, but let's not throw our partner under the bus at this stage of the game. I can find more documentation in here, but when Sharon had been so hurt last year and said, I'm done, our contract says we'll give BOR 2 years. We don't have a concessionaire, what does that look like? That looks like Broadwater County staff doing the job we have a concessionaire for.
Well, I think we signed a claim, but I think this contract needs to get reworked.
I don't think anybody would debate that. But again, I think it's unfair also to do it during the busy season. So if you guys are good with it, let's put it on the schedule for this fall and get that done. Is that the course we want to take?
I would think so, yes.
And if we wait again till January, I think we'll find the same thing. We will run out of time.
Yeah, no doubt. When they book those in February?
February 1st is when it starts, but that's also the time that they're getting prepped for the season. And not only that, but next January, we won't have a new commissioner that we're training, and going all through all this stuff with, so it wouldn't be as crazy as this past year, but I still think, let's do it in the fall, because it's gonna take some time.
Redoing contracts with the federal government.
You don't think it's really fast?
September might not be soon. I'm just saying,
Yeah, but Mike, you bring up a good point on, say, for example, you do have a different concessionaire, where are they gonna work out? You know?
Well, they're realistic, what they'd have to do is go buy one of those sheds and set it up temporary down there somewhere where they got power.
24/7.
I mean, you're gonna have to be there, well, the camp host has to be there 24/7 anyway.
Right, but the camp host has a full-time job already, they don't have to have
Yeah,
another
that's true.
camp host just to take care of,
And
what that store does.
I guess that you write that up as a part of that contract, is that there will be a person on site that 24/7 specifically to handle the facility, not do the work. You're gonna have the concessionaire plus the camp host has to be on site. Or a representative of the concessionaire plus the camp host would have to be on site.
Now, let me just say,
Now, I don't know how you would do that. Cause even if it's the Silos bar, the first place they're gonna go is they're gonna go to the store, and this is where you gotta go up to the bar.
Right.
So you're kinda, it's gonna be another change, it's gonna be hard to implement.
redoing the
happens.
contract doesn't mean we have to redo the concessionaire. We can work with Sharon to update that contract.
I'm just saying, if she decides she doesn't wanna do it, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying. She says, I've had enough, I don't wanna do it anymore, then now we're in that boat, trying to find.
That concessionaire. Or just like if the other people would've bought it, and after a year in the silos, they said, we don't want anything to do with the campground, we're happy with the KOA.
Right, exactly.
So then we're stuck with it too. So we might as well put the provision in the contract. Is there anything else to come before the meeting?
I have an update for you guys.
Okay.
I went to that emergency services meeting down on south end of the county, and a lot of the discussion was about the new bike area down in Copper City.
Thank you, sir.
So this is the map they presented us with, and if you look off to your, on the left-hand side of the page, you can visualize this is where Highway 287 would be.
Okay.
and then the road that comes in, and then that big, you know, that dip that goes down in the bottom with the hairpin turn, and it goes up to where the trailhead is. So that's the parking lot where everybody usually stops, right? Where they've been camping.
TH.
Yeah, TH,
Okay.
the trailhead.
Trail, okay.
And then all the trails go out from there, and you can see the number of them. There's 21 miles of trails. And they are marked for difficulty, kind of like similar to the, like a ski area would be, you know, black diamond runs and, you know, beginner and intermediate type stuff. And they are in the process of numbering each trail and creating a map for people as well. So they do allow overnight camping. And these trails are also open to hikers and trail runners, so it's not just bikers that are sharing it. It's getting quite a bit of use. They have designated 6 hill spots out there to land the helicopter for, you know, emergency evacuations if someone does get hurt. And it's my understanding that they've already flown helicopters. They marked it with their GPS, they know where to go to. They didn't get them put on this map in time, but they are designated, so. Anyway, the group that is sponsoring all this is called SWIMBA, Southwest Montana Bicycle Association. And they're based out of Bozeman, and they're one of the biggest biking groups in the Northwest, just because of the area they cover. So they're a pretty big association. Those folks came to the meeting, it was kind of interesting to talk to them, see what their vision is for what they have planned there, but they have been working with BLM to develop this. And they did get permission to possibly change that entry road there, we were talking about the big dip, that maybe they would go a little bit further to the north and make that a easier access.
Oh.
So, but that's on them, and the development of the trailhead is on them as well.
Are these other little boundaries, are these inline private properties?
Yeah, the squares there, yeah, those are private property owners within that BLM. So,
They talked all about the cleanup that they did.
the cleanup as far as for.
Bunch of discarded televisions,
Oh,
refrigerators,
yeah, they did,
microwaves.
they said they picked up a bunch of that stuff. Said that it's still multi-use out there, people still come out and shoot. You know, and, but they said that it's more respectful, people aren't bringing out the TVs and the propane tanks and all that kind of stuff and shooting it there. So, matter of fact, there were several members in that group that go out there and shoot, so it's shared use, which is still good. The very far back routes, way back, these blue ones, clear back to this corner, overlooks the river. So it's 2.5 hours bicycle ride back, that's a lot.
Doesn't look like easy ride either.
And it's
No.
not. Remember, some of the more, some of the more difficult ones are there, but anyway, I guess some of their concern was people getting back there and running out of water, things like that. They did talk about some of the events that they are planning. They still are planning to have some big events there. The question was raised is what do they provide as far as for like aid? Are they going to provide some medical assistance and things like that? And I think it has to go along with whatever the BLM policy is. I think they do have to provide some based on the amount of people there. And they said that they would provide aid stations, that have water and things like that. Some of these roads up here on the northern end of the boundary are still accessible for fire access only. They're not an improved road, so most people would want to drive on them, but you could with the brush truck with the fire department or something like that. But it is kind of limited access back there, and so the discussion went with our search and rescue, and their side-by-side, things like that, to go back and extricate somebody and bring them out where they could get on the helicopter or in the ambulance. So, anyway, it's one of those things that I think they developed, didn't have any idea where it was going to get that big this fast, and it's going to require some of our services.
Mhm.
So. And I did get a contact for the BLM, Brad Collin. So I've got the phone number, the email address for him as well. So he's kind of the one that's heading up the project. I'll make contact with him, and then hopefully we'll have more information as the thing develops. And keep us informed.
And keep Nicole in the loop too.
Yeah.
She and Brad have a relationship.
Okay.
And she's actually very knowledgeable of what's been going on.
Okay.
So yeah, if you bring in her in the loop,
Okay.
then everybody is,
Sure.
yeah, getting the same information.
Anyway. That's all that's going on down there.
That's all?
That's all. It's quite a bit, actually, isn't it? We discussed also the emergency services building that we would like to build down there eventually. And so the first part of that component is if Bridger Brewing is gonna donate that piece of property to us, to get that and get it deeded. And then we can start the process of doing the engineer work and going out for a grant.
That sounds good. That's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. There's a lot of things cooking in this county right now, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, kind of the nice thing about this group is that they're, even though they live on the other side of the river, they're supporting everything that's happening on the southern end of Broadwater County,
Mhm.
which is pretty nice. So whatever we're wanting to do down there, they're supportive, which is great. I think they just realize that, you know, it affects us all.
Right,
And they're not dry that well.
yeah.
Anything else?
Not for me.
Not for me. Okay, we'll adjourn at
Oh, closed door.
1:29. What are we doing?
Maybe recessing, or
We're
just
rec-
closing the door, yeah.
We're recessing and closing